It is 6 a.m. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Justin Hawkins. In the NFL, a blockbuster trade yesterday between the Miami Dolphins and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers send safety Minkah Fitzpatrick and a 2027 fifth-round pick in exchange for cornerback Jalen Ramsey, tight end Jonnu Smith, and a 2027 seventh from Miami. The Steelers also will sign Smith to a one-year, $12 million extension. Minkah Fitzpatrick goes back to the team that drafted him with Miami 11th overall in 2018, and Jonnu Smith reunites with offensive coordinator Arthur Smith in Pittsburgh, who was his OC during his time with the Titans. In other news with the Steelers, per reports, the trade has had no effect on their plans with star pass rusher T.J. Watt, despite reports of Pittsburgh's slow progress in getting an extension done for Watt and multiple NFL teams discussing whether they can make a trade for the four-time All-Pro and seven-time Pro Bowler. A lot of moves yesterday in free agency across the NBA, but the Memphis Grizzlies, they're keeping their own, as All-Star forward Jaren Jackson Jr. and the Grizzlies are expected to agree on a 5-year, $240 million maximum renegotiation and extension with a player option in the final year of the deal in 2029 and 2030. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you got to go to USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Tuesday morning and a brand new month begins right here on 104.5 The Zone. This is Ramon and Will, fueled by Scooters Coffee. Visit a locally owned Scooters near you in Rivergate, Smyrna, Brentwood, White House, or Mount Juliet. Amazing people, amazing drinks, amazingly fast. We love days of the week that feel like later days of the week, and we're off Thursday and Friday here in the Zone, so this is a Tuesday that feels a little bit like a Thursday. And here for Ramon Foster this morning, he is Zach Lyons from Cover 2 with Blaine and Zach, a 104.5 The Zone. I'm Will Bowling, Justin Hawkins, our producer. Zach, welcome. How we doing?
Doing good. I'm sure everybody's going to be very excited to hear me for 6 hours today on the radio.
That is quite the challenge that you are partaking. How do you feel? Or have you prepared any differently for today? Do you have copious amounts of caffeine on deck? How are we getting through this?
I do. I have I already drank a Celsius, one of the big boy Celsius.
Perfect.
You know, like I think they're called Essentials.
Okay.
And then I got another one for later today. I've already had some McDonald's. Prepared last night for the show this morning, and just going to freelance it for today. See, this is a lot easier than when I filled in for you.
Sure.
Even though it kind of was pretty easy because then we had Ramon, we had Cortland, and Stoney, so it's just the two of us today so far. But I just get to be the passenger today.
I love it. Well, the most important first question is, how are you with mornings? Like, are you legitimately a morning person? Are you usually up at this time? Like, how much of your routine are we changing today?
Let's see. I probably wake up typically 6 a.m. to 6:30 a.m., so not too bad.
Sure.
It's kind of like waking up for an early flight for me.
Okay.
It's like I didn't get a lot of good sleep last night because I'm just thinking about today. So, but I'm a morning person. I'm not
Sure.
I've become, as I get older, went from night owl in college to now morning person.
I'm right there with you. If you had told me while I was in college that I would be doing morning radio, I would laugh so hard at you. I actually still use one of my alarms from when I did the student radio show at Tennessee because it was required for the radio class I was in to get up and do a news update one day out of the week. And I think I still use the same like 5 a.m. alarm that I'd use for this. So you never know. You never know when mornings are going to call you.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's fun. It's not, I went through the first 2 years of this saying I'm not a morning person. I never will be. I'll just keep faking it. And I slowly became one. So I now believe it is possible to grow into the different side of that because I never, ever, ever thought I would be able to do morning.
Yeah, my parents are morning people now. They're at that age, I guess, where they're waking up at like 3:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm a little far away from that. But the morning show, the first time I did the morning show is not too bad. It's really when you get in, because I just stayed here at the studio the last time, and I'll do that again today. Nice. It's those buck hours, like between the morning show and the afternoon show, those buck hours that time starts dragging.
Sure. That's a good way to just know the 10 to 1 hours on 104.5 The Zone anyway. It's just the buck hours.
The buck hours. And it's a totally different, like, crew in the chat. Everybody's all nice. Morning, hello, good morning to you, good morning to you.
Everyone's having a good day.
Yeah.
Right.
By the time that we get to cover 2, it's like they hate everything about the Tennessee Titans, or like we hate, everything that you are saying. It's a totally different chat.
That's hilarious. I love it. 615-737-1045. Stream it live on 1045 The Zone TV. The F&M Bank chat is open for all of the pleasant comments to start the morning. Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. The big question to start the morning, Zach Lyons, is did the Steelers actually get better yesterday? They love to wait until Ramon Foster is out of town to do something insane. They signed Aaron Rodgers when Ramon was on vacation. They have now traded for Jalen Ramsey and gotten rid of Minkah Fitzpatrick and brought in former Titan Jonnu Smith while Ramon Foster is on vacation. So it is nice of Pittsburgh to wait until their 11-year NFL veteran on the radio in Nashville is just out of town to do something. What was your initial reaction to the moves they made yesterday?
Well, let's stop right there. Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
You talk about these big signings and a big trade and everything while Ramon's out of town. How do we know that he's not the reason those deals got done?
That's a good point.
Like, I mean, conspiracy theory hat, that sounds like to me he's out of town on business.
Sure.
Steelers business, getting these deals done for him.
I wouldn't
and
put
everything.
it past him.
Yeah. I do think the Steelers got better.
Okay.
Marginally better, but we were talking about it on Cover 2 yesterday. Look at their defense. Because we'll get to this later, but we were kind of talking about, trading Chig or trading Josh Wiley. How do you get that done? And you kind of look at Miami's defense and it's like terrible.
Right.
The Dolphins got, I think, worse. And the Steelers got better because now they match up with everybody in their own division a little bit differently.
Sure.
And talking about defense versus offense for the Steelers, and you look at the Bengals, right? Andre Yoshevich is their third wide receiver. Mm-hmm. Well, the Steelers have Darius Slay, Joey Porter, Jalen Ramsey. They match up well with the Bengals, right? They kind of don't have to worry about the run game because they can kind of handle that. Now they can kind of load up on the backside and kind of stop that offense through the air a little bit better. You could slow it down, I guess. Play Steelers ball, if you will.
Right. It is interesting how the big moves that they have made, they've also weakened that same position in the process. And when they brought in DK Metcalf, well, they also got rid of George Pickens. Like that is the interesting part of this to me, is that you are trying to, if you are Pittsburgh, do that thing that teams don't do very well and that the Titans didn't do very well, at the end of the John Robinson era, is reload for the future while still maintaining that you are very much in a win now window. And the shrapnel of the way Mike Tomlin could be affected by all of this is really interesting, because if this doesn't work out, like, there is no middle ground answer on Mike Tomlin now in 2025 to me. Like, as much as the pressure around him has risen, you have, if you are Pittsburgh, made it really easier for you to have an easy choice to make at the end of this. Either Mike Tomlin finds a way to make this work again, and you've got the veteran quarterback and you feel like you can compete, because these moves suggest that Pittsburgh feels like it can compete, not only in the AFC North, but just in the AFC in general. But if you go all in this season, they got the third most money in 2026 against the salary cap. So they have flexibility to just cut bait, go find their young quarterback, and kind of start over in 26 if they wanted to.
I kind of feel a little bit of the opposite. This feels like wounded animal moves. And there's blood in the water, however you want to do it, because the heat has turned up on Mike Tomlin. Even though the Steelers went, like 11-5 last year?
Right.
I guess it was 11-6. But, It's very weird because Pittsburgh Steelers fandom is kind of split on Mike Tomlin, it feels like, from at least the outside looking in.
Sure.
But a couple of months ago in Football and Other F Words, me and Stoney got railed by people in our chat talking about that. I was like, I would give up everything to have a Steelers Mike Tomlin tenure here at Tennessee.
Oh, yeah. No question.
And they were like, no, we don't want the Mike Tomlin. We don't want that Steelers. We want to win playoff games and do this and that. And I'm like, he has a Super Bowl. He has never had a losing season.
There are many, many, many owners who would give anything just to have their level of consistency.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, and I can't believe that there are fans out there that wouldn't want that level of consistency. But to me, this screams we have to, at the very, very minimum, win a playoff game. And the problem with that is that if Aaron Rodgers goes down with injury, well, you got Mason Rudolph and Will Howard back there. Good luck.
Right.
Exactly. I know Mason Rudolph has proven to be okay with the Steelers, but that's not a guy that's going to get you into the playoffs and get you to win a game. So to me, I feel like there is pressure on Tomlin. I get what you're saying, that maybe it's kind of like, okay, we're going all in this year, but unlike the Tennessee Titans, when they try to go all in, our cap is better. We have a healthier cap.
Yeah, that is the key difference.
And I get it, but I also think like Omar Khan is an interesting figure in all this, and that they are bucking the Steelers tradition by doing this trade, which makes me feel like either everybody's on the same page that, hey, we're not here, we got too complacent. And now we're not getting complacent, but waiting on a 40-year-old quarterback, all the way into June, and then making this trade for trading away a safety under 30 for a cornerback that's going to be over 30. Like, it's all weird moves, but they all make sense. And I think if any team can make all this weirdness work, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers.
615-737-1045. We will talk much more about that this morning, the different perspectives, the TJ Watt role, in all of it with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is the major story in the NFL. We asked a question on Twitter late last night. We'll retweet it again here in just a minute about the Titans and a tight end trade option. We're going to get to that with Easton Freeze as well at 8:20 this morning of A to Z Sports. We asked, now that Miami is in the market for a tight end, should the Titans entertain trade offers for Chig Okonkwo or Josh Wiley? You've got the option of picking either one. You can vote about being open to both, or say that you don't want to trade either one, period. We'll get to that coming up in hour 2 of the show this morning. But, Zach, I'm glad you mentioned Will Howard, because coming up, I want to talk about some of the quarterbacks who could have a Will Howard-like 2025 in college football. The most NFL-ready quarterbacks, the guys with the most to prove, and everything in between. We'll talk with Zach Lyons about that coming up next right here, Ramon Will, 104.5 The Zone. Hey, it's Will Bowling for my friends at League Company. I love talking about League Company because of all the different things they do for you. And look, if you don't want to be a do-it-yourself person, well, then League Company is the perfect place to call. When it comes to ensuring clean air in your home, League Company delivers. Their award-winning team provides thorough whole home duct cleaning services that eliminate dust, debris, and other allergens from your HVAC system. The result? Improved air quality, enhanced system efficiency, and peace of mind. Even better, League Company is offering 10% off a whole home duct cleaning for a limited time. So why wait? Schedule online at leaguecompany.com. That's leaguecompany.com for their duct cleaning services, or you can call them at 615-567-1000. Trust the folks with over 80 years of experience here in Middle Tennessee, online at leaguecompany.com. That's League Company, all you need. Ramon Will is fueled by Scooters Coffee on 104.5 The Zone, 615-737-1045, our penultimate show of the week, if you will, here on the program with Thursday and Friday off, 615-737-1045. So enjoy us while you got us. What we're saying this morning. Zach Lyons, Will Bowling, Justin Hawkins, our producer, streaming live on 104.5 The Zone TV. So, Zach, it is obviously way too early to do 2026 draft conversation with any level of certainty on where people are going to be ranked, who's going to go where. We'll have injuries. We'll have someone in these top fives we'll look at in a minute who will inexplicably just forget how to play football. See Beck, Carson in 2024 for the Georgia Bulldogs. But I thought this was interesting from Matt Miller, Jordan Reed. And I think it just brings up a larger college football discussion about the quarterbacks with the most to prove in college football in 2025. Do you agree with Matt Miller, Jordan Reed, that Cade Klubnik is that guy, that number one quarterback from the NFL perspective entering 2025?
That's a tough one because Garrett Nussmeier is lingering out there. And if I recall last year, everybody who thought that Garrett Nussmeier was going to come out, and he shouldn't have. I'm glad that he stayed for his sake and his development, but he was going to be considered the number one darling quarterback. So it's maybe that's how much they think of Cade Klubnik. And I like Cade. I think Cade was better than Garrett Nussmeier last year. I think he'll be better than Garrett Nussmeier this year.
Sure.
So I'm all in on that, but I am a little surprised of how Nussmeier feels like he's sort of fallen out of favor among the draft community after being a darling of the draft community last year. So it's just very interesting story arc.
It's interesting with LSU, and we'll get more into him as we kind of go through this whole list, but the offensive line that LSU had last season, and, of course, Will Campbell, the guy that's well documented, but I mean, they're losing 4 starters out of the 5 up front last season. And I mean, there was a future NFL line that was protecting him all season. And some of the mistakes, some of the different things that, he did or didn't take advantage of with the cast of characters with him. What was the biggest reason why, to you, he wasn't ready to come out in 25?
Oh, my gosh. I just think he, outside of Jalen Milroe, was the most turnover-worthy player in the SEC. Like, I am a notorious LSU hater ever since Brian Kelly became coach over there. But it feels like every year they are their team that gets overhyped right around this time of year, right? Leading into SEC media days when everybody does their rankings. I used to argue with Braden over on 440 Sports about how, no, you guys are wrong on LSU. Well, like, what's wrong with you guys? And I'd always be right. And I look at it and I go, for me, Garrett Nussmeier had one of the lowest pressure to sack ratios last year, but he had 3 linemen got drafted. I know he lost 4, but I think 3 of them got drafted. And I got to see a lot of growth. Like one of the questions you asked is like, who's the most pro-ready quarterback in the country in the season? You have Cade Klubnik, and I can't really disagree. I would say that Garrett Nussmeier seems to be that guy to put right next to him.
Sure.
But because of all the analysts last year. But look at this. I need to see way more. We're talking about a guy in the SEC out of 12 quarterbacks with at least 320 dropbacks. Nussmeier had the second most interceptions. He was 10th in yards per attempt, 9th in big-time throw percentage, 6th highest turnover-worthy play percentage, and he had all those offensive line. Like, all those yards look great in a box score, but it's like Aaron Rodgers last year.
Yeah,
Aaron Rodgers had all these yards. Patrick Mahomes had all these yards, but they also had the most attempts. He had the most attempts by far, even more than Jackson Dart.
Right.
So, like, to me, he's got so much to prove, but because of his frame and I guess now maybe a little bit of name recognition, he feels like the most pro-ready, but he's got a long way to go.
Yeah, I agree. That feels to me like the trend among college quarterbacks entering this season are guys that don't really have any excuses anymore, and guys who have big size, frame, big arms. I mean, we're going to talk about Drew Aller here in a minute as well at Penn State. He is the quintessential action figure quarterback, but To me, the interesting thing with Cade Klubnik is it feels like Clemson is going to be Clemson again in 2025. And the two freshman wide receivers last season, Antonio Williams and Bryant Wesco, are two guys who Cade Klubnik kind of helped put on the map. Last season. They added a player in the portal. What a concept, Dabo Sweetie. And Tristan Smith at wide receiver, freshman Gideon Davidson at running back, 5-star, one of the top running backs in the country entering the season. Will probably enter in the, further down the depth chart. But to me, it just feels like we wrote off Clemson as they are never going to be what they were at the height of their powers under Dabo Sweetie. In all the meanwhile, just quietly over here on the side, Cade Klubnik put together a terrific season. And I know statistically the box score isn't everything, but anytime in a Power 4 conference, you are putting together 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 3,639 yards, 63% completion. He set himself up at least for a big jump in 2025. And that is where Clemson is so fascinating to me. And I think Cade Klubnik is the guy just maybe with the highest floor, maybe at this point of just the production has got to be something, right? Especially considering so many of those receivers were so young, and Cade Klubnik kind of made them household names last season.
Yeah, I think about almost every quarterback that was listed in the top 5 for both Miller and Reed, and so a couple quarterbacks that we'll talk about that are outside of the top 5, all our guys have set themselves up to have high expectations heading into 2026. And I agree with you. When you're watching Clemson's season over the course of 2024, you're like, dude, this Cade guy's legit.
Right.
He's doing it with hardly anybody that you would know. And maybe Dabo he seems like a coach that's really overly reliant on his quarterback being something to win some games. Maybe the quarterback is carrying the coach in this situation. And I look at Cade, and there was a lot of talk around Cam Ward and all this last year that he wouldn't even be, top 5 in last year's class, the 2023 class, or 2024 class. He wouldn't be, top 3 or top 4 in the 2026 class. And everybody's like, well, who's better than Cam? And the first name that always came to my lips was Cade Klubnik.
Right.
Is because you expect, again, you have to live up to these expectations, because how many times did we talk about Spencer Rattler after Trevor Lawrence got drafted as the number 1 quarterback, and then he didn't even enter in the draft for 2 years later and went in the 5th round.
Right.
So, they all have to live up to this. But when you talk about Cade, Garrett Nussmeier, Fernando Mendoza, Lenore Sellers, Drew Aller, you can go down the list to even Carson Beck and a few others, is that they've all got a lot to prove this year, because you don't have to come out in some of these cases because of NIL, right? You don't have to come out. To me, when we talk about quarterbacks that have the most to prove, Nico's the first one that comes to my mind. Arch Manning is the second one, because Arch has to live up to the hype. Of course he will. But I'm not very concerned. But Nico has a lot to prove. He has a lot to prove that, okay, I'm going to a pro style offense that apparently fits what I can do best. And if it doesn't, and he's going to get compared to Merklinger and Aguilar, whoever may start, and vice versa, Nico's kind of got a lot to prove. Now, it does not mean anything for the NFL draft, but maybe if he goes off. But he has a lot to prove from just a pure college quarterback standpoint.
So the Nico situation is interesting, because it has always felt like the people around Nico, and maybe himself in this conversation as well, have a plan, and I'm curious to see how willing they are to deviate from that plan. And the plan has been 3 seasons and we're out.
Yeah.
3 seasons of NIL money. Obviously, the original plan was to compete at Tennessee, was to compete for a championship, was to put together a solid roster. And unfortunately, you talked to a lot of people up there. Tennessee felt like it had that last season. And funny enough, the quarterback was the part of it on offense that was kind of lacking in order for that team to meet its ceiling. But when you look at Nico, how far away is he from being ready as a prospect? What does he need to prove to you to say, yes, this is the right decision, you are a 2026 NFL draft prospect?
He's got to exceed. I think there's a couple different things. He's got to show me some passion on the field.
Yeah, right.
I'm all for a cool, calm, collected attitude, and Cam Ward has that, right? And I'm not talking that you need the up and downs of Will Levis to put it into Tennessee Titans perspective.
For sure.
But what you need is a guy that can command a huddle and then can show some passion and some fire on a consistent basis. We saw glimpses of that from Nico here and there after he would make a touchdown or he would make a run or something like that.
Right.
But you're going now to a pro-style offense, so now you need to be able to command the huddle. You need to be able to get your play calls in line, get everybody on the same page, and hold people accountable when they're not on the same page. When your receiver maybe runs too deep or goes too short, you need to be taking command and showing him how you want him to run that route. That will also help you. So to me, I look at it like this. Nico has to prove a lot that is kind of like the quarterback leadership side.
Sure.
But statistically, he's going to have to be better. I mean, he was not excitingly spectacular by college football standards, right? Your college football quarterbacks are either wildly athletic and electric in that side, or they're precision passers and they're going crazy, or they're game winners. And like, he just didn't seem to really find that niche for him. So like, to me, he's got to figure out who he is as a quarterback and be that on the field. We'll see if he's able to do that over on the West Coast.
It's a great point because there was not necessarily just one thing he thrived at.
Yeah.
Like Tennessee changed a lot of that offense. And Josh Heupel, you talk to people up there, went more with 2 tight end personnel to take away some of his weaknesses and try to create more throws over the middle and get kind of the weaknesses out of Nico's game. But aside from a couple of deep throws on the run that kind of wowed you, saying, whoa, like that is it. We see it now. Like, they just wasn't consistent enough. And I think so much about the throw against Alabama that he made to Dante Thornton on the right sideline in that second half, like on the run, 3rd down at about 8, I want to say, and about a 40 to 50-yard throw in the air that's just perfectly in the bucket for Dante Thornton. Like, he was capable of that, but there was no identity of that offense other than Dylan Sampson just running the football and kind of getting them out of jail. And even with Joe Milton, there was an identity of what he did best. Right. It was the go balls over the top that he finally became accurate on at the end of his Tennessee career. And he wasn't going to throw over the middle, but by God, he was going to zing that thing across the numbers and across the hash marks. So you make a good point there. So the interesting part of this to me, Zach, is some of the guys you are most interested in watching. And there's a couple blurbs about Drew Aller, because to me, he is the one I am fascinated by entering this season. Because at 6'5", 238 pounds, Albert Breer has written at SI.com that there were teams who were actively encouraging him to come out in 2025. And I mean, that's where I kind of imagine, like, could Drew Aller have convinced one of these QB-needy teams that were in for Shedeur Sanders and Jackson Dart from the start to make a move at the top 10? Like, for you, if Drew Aller, just the way he currently is today and the way he currently was after the college football playoff, if Drew Aller comes out in the 2025 NFL draft, where does he go in your mind?
To the Tennessee Titans, the number 1 overall. Like, I think that there is I think it's a lot bigger possibility than what people want to hear. I think they'll end up falling in love with Cam Ward, the person. Right. But I think everybody has this recency bias when it comes to Drew Aller. The last game you see is who you are, right? Sure. And not a lot of people, I would say, in the SEC, or at least in Tennessee, are watching a lot of Penn State football. Right. But what he is all potential. He needed to go back to school. Right. And I understand that teams wanted him to come out, because I do think that while he could push for that number 1 overall quarterback ranking kind of spot, I do think that when it comes down to with how that quarterback, draft shaped out anyway, Drew Aller probably would have been the number 2 quarterback off that board. And you may see him go ahead of an Abdul Carter. You may have seen him go ahead of a Travis Hunter. We may never see that trade. You never know. But like, Drew Aller has everything you're looking for. But I think the smart thing to do if you are in college now is to get as many reps and as much experience as possible. Sure. Because yes, you're risking injury. That's what kind of teams are looking for, is that experience. And I think in a weak quarterback class, Drew Aller probably stands out, size specifically, because this was kind of a smaller quarterback class for the most part. So I do think Drew Aller, with his cannon, with his size, with his athletic ability, that he would have stood out. I don't know much about his personality.
Right.
Whereas now with Cam Ward, it's kind of hard for me to see no other path but Cam Ward.
Exactly.
And that's kind of how it shaped out for the Tennessee Titans. But it'd have been interesting to see how Drew Aller inserted into that draft would have shook out. Now he's in a more loaded quarterback class. So now, to your point, who is one of the college quarterback prospects you're most interested to watch? I think he's up at the top of the list because we don't know really what that progression is going to look like.
Right. Well, he can compete. He can complete passes to wide receivers now.
Yeah.
Like that was the thing for Drew Aller. I think he was the product of his circumstances in a lot of ways at Penn State. And you go back to that game, they lost to Notre Dame 27-24. And you look at all of the statistics from that game for Drew Aller and for the different guys he's throwing to. You know how many receiving yards and receptions there were by wide receivers by Penn State in that game?
Very, very little.
0 receptions for 0 yards. 0. I mean, not a single
It was like the
completion.
Kansas City Chiefs when they had Dwayne Bowe. Remember, they didn't have any touchdowns scored by a receiver?
Exactly. Like it. Truly, there is 0 production for the wide receiver position last year for Andy Kotelnicki and that offense at Penn State. So what do? They get Trevor Pena, Devontae Ross, and Kyron Hudson. That, to me, Penn State is the number 1 team in college football entering 2025. And if you looked at black and white jerseys for all of these players and all of these rosters, I think staff-wise, I think head coaching-wise, I think all things considered and what we know about Penn State, they are my preseason number 1 team. I'm willing to hear arguments for Texas and for Georgia in that as well. But for me, it's Penn State because of the production that they bring back at running back in Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, and Trevor Pena, Devontae Ross, and Kyron Hudson. I mean, Ross, one of the top receivers in the portal, 76 catches for 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns. Trevor Pena was the guy that Syracuse head coach Fran Brown was talking about. Well, we got guys coming asking for multiple million. That's the homie from Ohio State. We're not paying just any old receiver that. So Trevor Pena says, all right, well, that may not have been about me necessarily, but I'm going to hit the portal after spring ball. There is no excuse for Drew Aller in 2025. None whatsoever.
No, I would agree.
Andy Kotelnicki is the offensive coordinator. That is one of the best offensive minds calling plays as an offensive coordinator in college football right now.
Super creative.
I mean, the way that Kansas fell off without him there, and Jalen Daniels and Jalen Neal and all those guys at Kansas, like it took them and Lance Leipold a while to kind of finally look like a legitimate offense last season without him. So to me, it's Drew Aller is the fascinating prospect. Is that kind of action figure, almost built like Will Levis a little bit, maybe a little bit taller and thicker. And that's maybe where the comparisons end with him and Will Levis, of just big action figure types who played at Penn State for a little bit. But he is a fascinating prospect to me.
Well, and when you look at like some of the stats that are kind of translatable for those that want to like harp on, well, he threw 0 touchdowns and 1 interception versus Notre Dame.
Right.
Okay, well, he threw 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions against Boise State just a week earlier.
Exactly.
But when you're talking about like turnover-worthy play percentage, last 2 seasons, 1% and 1.1%. That is super low. But you combine that with his pressure to sack ratio. When you're talking about these are things that matter, that usually translate to the NFL.
Right.
Is like he has 10.1% and 13% the last 2 years. This is a guy that protects the ball, has a good feel in the pocket. Now, is he perfect? No, but that's what maybe this next year can do. When you have Drew Aller this is why he needed to come back. And let me say something. For all those that have Drew Aller out, the NFL didn't.
Right.
What did Albert Breer say? They were begging him to come out.
Yep.
Okay? He chose to come back because that's going to be what's best for him. Mm-hmm. He should make a jump this year. And a lot of these quarterbacks will. But if the NFL wanted you last year, they're going to want you next year as 100%. Long as you make the progression.
And that's the thing, too. You either want the kind of on that graph of turnover-worthy plays and pressure to sack ratio. Yeah. If you can just master one of those things first, it feels like the other one is a little bit more realistic to hone in on. The problem with Will Levis for the Titans was that he wasn't good at either.
Right.
He wasn't good at avoiding sacks, and he wasn't good at avoiding turnovers. You got to do one or the other to have a chance to really feel like you have something to grow with. Otherwise, you need to be sitting for 3-4 years while you learn behind a starter. One more question I want to ask about the quarterbacks when we come back. Who could raise their stock the most? Is there somebody off the beaten path a little bit that you're interested to see that we haven't mentioned yet? Talking 2025 college quarterbacks, the way it pertains to the NFL draft. We'll do more of that coming up next. Tuesday morning, Ramon Will, fueled by Scooters Coffee. They are locally owned in Rivergate, Smyrna, Brentwood, White House, or Mount Juliet. Amazing people, amazing drinks, amazingly fast. Zach Lyons in for Ramon Foster. Justin Hawkins, our producer, 615-737-1045. I'm Will Bowling. So wrapping up our discussion, Zach, to start the show on college quarterbacks with the most NFL interest entering the 2025 season. Who have we not covered that deserves our attention? Who is that guy who you feel like could explode and raise their stock this season?
Fernando Mendoza,
right.
6'6", 225 pounds, got a rocket for an arm. He has NFL brains and brawn. Like, he is the complete package when you go back and watch his tape. But he is going to be with Indiana and Curt Cignetti. Perfect match made in heaven. You know, like, he's already got such a well-rounded toolbox and frame that Curt Cignetti, you know, he did a lot for Curtis Rourke, but Curtis Rourke didn't do anything in the NFL.
Right.
Fernando Mendoza is NFL ready already.
Yeah,
so, like,
for sure.
to me, he's a guy that can do a lot for Indiana, do a lot for his draft stock. Go watch the Auburn game from last year where he throws a perfect back shoulder fade while being German suplex. Go to the Pitt game last year where he delivers a piss missile to the backside post on a 3rd and 15. Like, those throws are all over his tape. He also has good pocket movement, pre- and post-snap command. Like, he's under complete control. And as I said, you got Curt Cignetti. I expect the passer to be a human highlight reel of incredible throws this year. I think more people need to be behind Fernando Mendoza, and I would not be surprised if by the end of the year, he may be quarterback one.
Interesting. Okay. Fernando Mendoza. I mean, I will never doubt Curt Cignetti's ability to turn a quarterback into a dude and into a statistical machine. Like, Indiana is a really interesting case study in reloading again after really exceeding expectations, because now the bar is set a lot higher for them this season. But, I mean, Mendoza, and he did that viral interview last season. Like, we've seen the leadership where I forget which game it was specifically, but the post-game interview where he's, like, crying, just, I love my boys, I love Cal. Like, the leadership part of it, the personality part of it, you feel like that box is checked with him as well.
Yeah, and that Cal defense was a big fan favorite for me going into the NFL draft this year. A lot of players that got drafted, but that Cal team was just filled with leadership, personalities, and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like when you start looking at guys that have that personality, but they have the physical and mental attributes to back it up, it's really hard to stop a train like that.
It is, and I'll tell you what, we're going to get our answers on Fernando Mendoza in Indiana because that schedule for them is significantly more challenging than last year's was.
Yeah.
For IU. So the first 3 weeks, Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State, not really much we can learn there. I think Illinois could be this year's Indiana in college football with Luke Altmaier, with what Brett Bielema has. Some of the most returning production of any Power 4 team of what they are bringing back from what was a good team last season. They are a dark horse for me to make the playoff. They go to Iowa. Say what you will about Kirk Ferentz offenses, but Kirk Ferentz defenses in that building will always provide you challenges. They go to Oregon this year. Michigan State. Nico comes to town. UCLA October 25th. Then at Maryland, at Penn State, against Wisconsin, and then Purdue, which Purdue's not much. That's like playing Kennesaw State again late in the season. So we will get our answers, no doubt, on Fernando Mendoza. To me, I feel like Carson Beck has an opportunity to raise his stock again and say, well, no, that was Mike Bobo's problem at Georgia my last season. And Carson Beck was victimized by a lot of drops last season. Like, Georgia being near the top of Power 4 teams in drops overall in that wide receiving core, to me, is something that isn't talked about enough when we talk about Carson Beck. Very 100%. And now they've obviously addressed that, and they've brought in a who's who of wide receivers again in the portal. And Carson Beck said, I'm out and I'm going with my then girlfriend to Miami, and they're no longer together, but that's neither here nor there. They also, Miami, they always have a good offensive line under Mario Cristobal. And Francis Mauigoa, who was a Tennessee recruit a couple of years ago, could hear his name called the top 5 overall picks of the NFL draft in 2026 as well. His blind side's protected. He's got 2 returning tackles. What do you make of Carson Beck and what he can still do in 2025 at a new place with a lot to prove again this year.
Yeah, he's a guy that I would put as one of the guys outside the top 5, that list that Reed and them put out, that I think you should be watching, just because, again, kind of like Aller, he was a guy that a lot of people had, and Nussmeier, he's a guy that a lot of people had as one of the best quarterbacks in the draft class. He was, I don't buy into that, but this would go a long way into helping me see that. Because Miami is not Georgia. Now, he's going to be going up against, lesser defenses than he did in the SEC. But we saw what he did against SEC teams. How much of that was because of the team around him and how much of that was because of him? Now we'll get to see how much of it is because of him.
Right.
And so for me, it's like this kind of answers my lingering questions about most Georgia quarterbacks, kind of like most Alabama quarterbacks.
Sure.
Is like, how much of it is because of you? You go out here and have a really good, season. You guys are right there in the playoff conversation down there in Miami by the end of the year. You don't suffer a lot of drops, so maybe your stats go up or this and that. Like, show me that without Georgia's awesome defense putting you in great field position, without Georgia's run game to lean on, show me what you can do with your arm. Carson Beck is a guy that's getting paid like crazy, and he did not enter into the NFL draft. So show me, coming off a year where you suffered a pretty big injury, what you can do. And I think he's a guy that you need to be keeping on your radar outside of that top 5 quarterbacks.
Well, again, we get our answers quickly on Miami hosting Notre Dame Sunday, August the 31st, week 1, and they get Florida coming to town on September the 20th. Which that's going to be a much improved Florida team overall with Billy Napier. So I think the theme of all of this, wrapping a bow on it, Zach, is this is a fascinating quarterback class. There is high-level potential. There are young guys. We didn't even get into Lenore Sellers or Arch Manning.
One of my favorite players is Lenore Sellers.
Yeah. I'm totally with you. I think we know more about Lenore Sellers than DJ Lagway at this point.
Yeah.
I feel like we've maybe as a sports watching and football watching people have jumped the gun on just a little bit. Sellers, we've not jumped the gun on. Sellers, if anything, we are underrating, I feel like. But it's a fascinating class, and it's going to be a fun season in the SEC with so much unproven and so much new, I think, to watch a lot of these guys. 615-737-1045 is our number as we transition to hour 2. Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, with the ripple effects of the Pittsburgh Steelers' big trades yesterday. What does the future hold for one of their biggest stars? We'll dive into that next.
It is 7 a.m. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Justin Hawkins. Yesterday in the NFL, a blockbuster trade between the Miami Dolphins and the Pittsburgh Steelers as the Steelers send safety Minkah Fitzpatrick and a 2027 fifth-round pick in exchange for cornerback Jalen Ramsey, tight end Jonnu Smith, and a 2027 seventh from Miami. The Steelers also signed Jonnu Smith to a one-year $12 million extension. Minkah Fitzpatrick goes back to the team that drafted him 11th overall in 2018 with Miami. And Jonnu Smith, he reunites with offensive coordinator Arthur Smith in Pittsburgh, who was his OC during his time with the Titans. In other news with the Steelers, per reports, the trade will have no effect on their plans with star pass rusher TJ Watt, despite reports of Pittsburgh's slow progress of getting an extension done for Watt and multiple NFL teams discussing whether they can make a trade for the four-time All-Pro and seven-time Pro Bowler. And a lot of moves in free agency across the NBA yesterday, but the Memphis Grizzlies, they're keeping their own as All-Star forward Jaren Jackson Jr. and the Grizzlies are expected to agree on a 5-year, $240 million maximum renegotiation and extension with a player option in the final year of his deal in 2029 and 2030. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you got to go to USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Away we go into hour number 2, 7 a.m. in beautiful Music City and on an overcast, humid morning. Look, if you woke up in Music City this morning, you're having a beautiful day. 615-737-1045 is the number. Zach Lyons of Cover 2 with Blaine and Zach filling in for Ramon Foster this morning. I'm Will Bowling. Justin Hawkins makes the show happen, and we stream it live for you on the 104.5 The Zone app and 104.5 The Zone TV, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. Zach, a very fast opening 60 minutes. How we feeling? We feeling caffeinated? We feeling energetic? We're feeling alive? 1 hour down, 5 more to go for you today.
Yeah, it doesn't really, it's really weird with the morning show. I figured it would feel longer than Cover 2, even though it is. It's just I have so much fun talking about sports. It just never feels like work.
I love it. Well, we're glad you're here. We appreciate you filling in for the Big Ragu, who will be back with us next week. Rhett Bryan will be back with us tomorrow as we work through this little 3-day week here before July 4th. So yesterday, the manna from heaven that dropped into the laps of NFL sports talk radio markets all around the country was the big trade between the Miami Dolphins and Pittsburgh Steelers. Jonnu Smith links up with Arthur Smith again. You have Jalen Ramsey, the Nashville native, going to Pittsburgh. And you have Minkah Fitzpatrick going back to the Miami Dolphins. Mike Florio writing, though, about how this affects TJ Watt in Pittsburgh, who was not around for minicamp, did not show his face at OTAs. And according to Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk, the two sides, Pittsburgh and Watt, are nowhere close on a new deal. One of the best defensive players of the game, Florio writes, is ready for any outcome and not afraid to push the issue. How much does this trade in these moves impact TJ Watt? Like, if you are in his camp, do you take this personally that Pittsburgh is more willing to pay 2 other guys that haven't been in their building than him, who has carried that defense in that building for seasons, for years at this point?
I mean, I would take it personally for negotiation purposes, but in all reality, you shouldn't take it personally because where better can you go realistically than Pittsburgh? And as you said, they have one of the best cap situations next year. So they have the opportunity. This is the last year of his deal for people that do not know, which seems crazy because it feels like he just signed his deal like a couple of years ago.
Right.
But he's due, but for like a 4-year, $150 million contract. But we're also talking about a guy that's about to be 31 in a couple of months. Now, he's an easy trade, to be honest with you, because the new team acquires $21 million non-guaranteed, and it only leaves behind $9.4 million in dead cap. So they'd save even more. Their cap would look even better next year, but you can spend that money on. Why not spend on TJ Watt? I kind of lean inside the camp as like, TJ Watt, I get it. You're doing the negotiation thing.
Sure.
Probably will be there at training camp, even if a new deal's not going to be done by then. I think now that this is done and they have this in place, because they've been working on this Jalen Ramsey deal for a while.
Right.
They've been waiting on Aaron Rodgers to sign for a while. Now your books are a little bit more solidified. Now you can plan for TJ Watt.
Right. It is kind of a tricky one because on one hand, TJ Watt can go to Pittsburgh and say, well, you are signaling that you feel like we can compete this season by signing Aaron Rodgers, by trading for Jalen Ramsey, by adding Jonnu Smith.
Yeah.
So why would you, want to trade me? Like, what is your incentive to then go back on that? I'm your best player. Like, I'm TJ Watt. I'm the guy that's been the focal point of this defense. At the same time, from the Pittsburgh perspective, they kind of had to settle for Will Howard in the draft this year. And Aaron Rodgers is going to take forever to officially retire whatever he does. So when he says, well, I'm thinking this is probably my last year, he's going to hold us all hostage the same way he did this year because he is addicted to the attention. But let's be honest, Aaron Rodgers is probably a 1-year rental for Pittsburgh at quarterback in 2025. If you are looking for a surefire way to make sure that you are less likely to be in quarterback purgatory next season, offloading your biggest asset is the best way to plan for the future at quarterback. And that's the other thing Florio writes. He says, the question becomes whether they'd trade him for immediate help or whether the play would be to stockpile picks with the goal of trying to get in position to draft a new franchise quarterback in 2026. Are they closer to going for it or are they closer to blowing it up? That is the question I still have with Pittsburgh, because it just feels to me like this is the definitive answer season. This is the mecca for Mike Tomlin is 2025, and they've loaded up all of these things for just 2025 with a ton of money in 26, an open quarterback situation to say, if this doesn't work, if we can't make a playoff run with all of these veteran pieces we've added, we need to start planning for the future, and a future probably without Mike Tomlin.
Okay, so, I mean, they didn't have to settle for Will Howard. They chose to settle for Will Howard.
That's true.
Because they picked Derek Carman, a defensive tackle, in the first round. You could have took a quarterback. Now, whether there's a quality quarterback that you really fell in love with or not, who knows? Maybe you shouldn't have drafted Kenny Pickett when you drafted Kenny Pickett.
Right.
They seem to have caught themselves in this, I think the best term like you used is quarterback purgatory, but they're in this weird cycle where it's like it's either we kind of screwed up, with the rookie, but now we held on too long for a veteran. Because, Ben Roethlisberger really screwed them. Let's be honest. Right. He really messed up everything with his will he, won't he retiring, and they just kind of never prepared for it. And then, it happened, then they're like, oh, crap, it actually happened this time. But I will say, we just got done talking about all these young quarterbacks, which even if that's the case, all these young quarterbacks, and a lot of teams kind of have their quarterback situation kind of settled. That means that you may have a good quarterback. Even though you drafted Will Howard, doesn't mean you have to play Will Howard.
Right.
Doesn't mean you have you can't draft a quarterback in the first round if one falls to you. So there may be a situation, but that's a lot of projection, right?
It is.
But your team has proven over the years, even from TJ Watt's side or the Steelers' side, it don't matter who your quarterback is. You're putting together a winning season because of your defense, because of TJ Watt. So from the Steelers' side, I get it. They're going to now probably get the extension done. TJ Watt's side, maybe he does end up demanding a trade. Sure. I'd be very hard-pressed to think, because are the Steelers going to get what they want enough to want to trade you? And are you going to be able to find on the open market a 4-year, $150 million deal? That's open market, because they have to give up, quotation marks, because they have to give up draft picks for you.
Right.
It's a weird situation. I get this weird vibe over the last year that people are kind of down on TJ Watt as a elite game changer for whatever reason. He's no Myles Garrett.
Right.
But he's the next tier. That's how I view it.
Sure.
But there's a lot of people out there that are kind of down on TJ Watt.
Well, just the amount of turnovers that he creates and like the level
Right.
of havoc that he creates for your defense is still significant at this point of his career. I just get Last Dance vibes from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at for 2025. And Ramon and I have talked about this so much, and not just because he played there for 11 years, because I think they are legitimately the most fascinating team entering this season in the NFL. And maybe I'm starting to have an inherent bias towards talking about them because of Ramon, and for good reason, right? Because he was there for so long. But it feels to me like the end of an era is rapidly approaching in Pittsburgh. And the lack of playoff success mixed with the circus, for lack of a better term, that Aaron Rodgers is, it's almost like if you were so willing to have a circus around your team and around quarterbacks, well, why not just draft Shedeur Sanders?
Well, let me ask you this. So you're talking about from TJ Watt's side about quarterback purgatory.
Yeah.
We're probably not talking about quarterback purgatory if they would have done what I suggested they do and signed Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I agree.
This was a layup for the Pittsburgh Steelers to go after hard Sam Darnold.
Yep.
You have the money for the future to be able to do it. Then you would have been able to pay TJ Watt. Sam Darnold, I know Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, and they may get a good year out of Aaron Rodgers, but he likes mobility and all this kind of stuff. And I know Sam Darnold threw all those picks in the playoffs and everything. But Sam Darnold with Art Smith in Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin, that's the best quarterback you've had since prime Ben Roethlisberger.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And Sam Darnold, who is still 28. I mean, he just turned 28 on June 5th. Like, you talk about some of the other guys that we prop up at the quarterback position and some of the other guys that we are so interested in. Will Howard will be 24 this season when the season begins. Like, Will Howard turns 24 on September the 24th. That's only a 4-year difference in a guy that we've totally written off. And obviously, after last season, not totally written off anymore, but it's a 7-year NFL vet in Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
Who is 28 years old, and a guy who will take his first snap this preseason, and Will Howard is only 4 years younger than him. Like, I completely agree, and it's why I wanted Darnold here. It's why I wanted Darnold a lot of places that I feel like were a quarterback away or right on the cusp and had a lot of other things figured out. But fascinating day for Pittsburgh yesterday, kind of taking one step forward and maybe a half step back and offloading Minkah Fitzpatrick at the same time. Coming up, where do the Titans fit in all of this? Now Miami needs a tight end. Well, the Titans might have a little bit of a surplus at tight end. Are you interested in shopping your tight ends? Chig Okonkwo, Josh Wiley, both? Neither? We'll talk about that with Zach Lyons next. A big trade in the NFL yesterday and a Nashville native at the center of it. How does it affect Nashville's professional football team? Ramon Will is fueled by Scooters Coffee on 104.5 The Zone, locally owned in Rivergate, Smyrna, Brentwood, White House, or Mount Juliet. Zach Lyons in for Ramon Foster. I'm Will Bowling. So Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith go to Pittsburgh. Minkah Fitzpatrick goes back to Miami. And now all of a sudden, Mike McDaniel needs a tight end, Zach Lyons. And the Titans
he does
have a little bit of a surplus here. We're going to talk with Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports coming up in hour 3 about this. He's going to join us at 8:20. But just from the 30,000-foot view, from the broad perspective, as simply as we can put it, should the Titans, Zach, listen to trade offers for Chig Okonkwo and or Josh Whyle?
Yes, you should be always listening. I guess the best way to put it is you should always be listening to trade offers on almost every player that you have if you're the Tennessee Titans. Because you are in a, as they have put it numerous times, a 2 or 3 year rebuild.
Yeah, right.
So that means that players on expiring contracts, not just Chick. I'd be listening to offers on Roger McCreary, Amani Hooker. You know, those guys are on expiring contracts that, yeah, sure, maybe they factor into your compensatory pick formula later down the road. But right now you have something guaranteed. Now, it does not mean that I necessarily would take anything.
Right.
Because there are people in, you know, I'm sure in your all's chat and my chat as well. But like, trade Traylon Burks for a bag of chips or, you know, do this or do that. There are some people who don't even think Josh Whyle has any trade value. And I would like to remind those people, Isaiah Wilson was traded for a pick. After being arrested, jumping off balconies, being on Instagram, he was traded for a pick.
Right.
Everybody can be traded for a pick almost. If he can, I'm just convinced everybody can.
I agree. Even if it's a swap where you feel like you're moving up 50 spots.
Yeah.
In 2027. Like it is something. And as Chad Brinker says, in a draft and develop organization, more ammo and more bullets to fire in the NFL draft. That is significant to this franchise at this point, even if it is day 3.
Yeah, it's all comes down to the right price.
Right.
But yes, they should definitely be listening to offers on both. Just, I would be more reluctant to trade Chig than I would Josh Whyle because I don't think Josh Whyle is making the team.
I don't think so either. I'm with you on that. And we asked this question last night on Twitter at Ramon Will, where you can follow the show. Should the Titans entertain trade offers for Chig or Josh Whyle? If so, who would you rather trade? 15% of you say Chig. 30% of you say Whyle. 46% say open to both. 9% voting don't trade either one. So let's start with the Josh Whyle perspective on this, because I agree with you on your point that I think as of today, the fair way to put it is he's on the outside looking in. Mm-hmm. A lot of evaluating still to come. Preseason games, unfortunately injuries, quarterback situations. Who is throwing him the ball in some of these preseason games? Is it Will Levis, who already has a rapport with him, could raise his stock a little bit?
Right.
Is it Brandon Allen or even Tim Boyle, who is essentially an extension of the coaching staff at this point in both of those two guys? For Josh Whyle, why do you think he is on the outside looking in? Why do you think that he is in pencil off the roster, not on the roster at this point?
Well, the Tennessee Titans last year keeping 5 tight ends was the most confusing thing I have ever seen at least this regime of the Tennessee Titans do.
Sure.
And maybe Traylon Burks over NWI for like 6 weeks was more confusing.
Right.
But like 5 tight ends for a team that is traditionally going to shift into 11 personnel kind of situation. And Josh Whyle provided you very little value last year. He didn't provide you value in the passing game. They went to Nick Vannett before they would go to Josh Whyle in the passing game. They would rely on Nick Vannett to block before they would go to Josh Whyle. He didn't really do anything on special teams. This is a guy that provides very little value for a team that probably is going to course correct this year and probably only, if I had to guess, keep 3 tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree.
I look at Josh Whyle as a young piece, an inexpensive piece for another team. And as much as, we have just said that Josh Whyle provides no value for the Tennessee Titans. Well, you look at the tight ends for the Miami Dolphins, Pharaoh Brown, Julian Hill, Tanner Connor, Jalen Conyers, and Hayden Rucci. Yeah, he could probably provide them enough value. And they are also going to be an 11 personnel team. So maybe he's not their pass catching tight end or something, but he's better depth than some of these other guys.
Right. So Easton Freeze wrote about this at AtoCSports.com, and we'll talk more about this with him in hour 3. But he writes, if the Dolphins, are truly interested in a buy low option, Wiley would make sense for them. They wouldn't need him to be an inline blocker, which is something he struggled with. And he wouldn't see much man coverage at all with the amount of speed they have across that offense. He could just focus on being a zone-beating, receiving Y tight end, which Easton Freeze writes at AZSports.com, I believe would set him up to be his best. How much does Gunnar Helm make Josh Wiley redundant in this Titans offense? How much of that role do you see Gunnar Helm taking this season?
All of it. Like, to be honest, I like Chig, and I think Chig is very overhated because I think Tennessee Titans fans love to do this. They love to take average players and put above average expectations on them. So I think by now we know what Chig is, and we'll get more into Chig later.
Sure.
But for me, Gunnar Helm, my hot take is that he's tied in 1 at week 1. But at least my realistic take is by the end of the year, Gunnar Helm is going to be tied in 1.
I agree.
Does not mean that he isn't going to be able to be upgraded next year. He's a 4th round pick, right? Like there are certain limitations for a 4th round pick, but I do think that Gunnar Helm provides you everything you're looking for in the red zone, everything you're looking for in the middle of the field as a safety net, everything you're looking for blocking. Like, he is a guy that can improve and do everything a tight end is supposed to do.
Right.
We'll see if he's able to do it at a high level. He may be a jack of all trades, master of none, which is fine because that's kind of what this team has lacked, is a guy that can do every phase of the game of a tight end. They've lacked that since Johnny Smith and Delaney Walker.
The thing with Gunnar Helm I've found interesting, and we've talked about this a lot on this show, and stemming from conversations I had with Gunnar at OTAs and mandatory minicamp, and with Luke Stocker on the last day of mandatory minicamp as well, is that a lot of the terminology and a lot of the things that Gunnar Helm was being asked to do at Texas is what the Titans are going to ask him to do this season as well. And there is an element of there's not really that much different that he's doing, which allows you to have an impact quickly. Now, granted, you're playing against bigger and better athletes. Right. You're playing against better linebackers and safeties. And from the Titans' perspective, we have to remember who he's going to be playing against as well. James Williams, Otis Reese, Anthony Orji, the different cast of characters, Cedric Gray playing at that coverage linebacker, quote-unquote, spot is a big question mark. So it's going to be hard to judge. Like, if Gunnar Helm just feasts on the Titans defense in training camp, well, yeah, maybe there is a level of success he's having, but also you have to remember that's maybe the biggest question we have outside of edge rusher on the entire roster about the defense. So there is an element of, like, is he taking advantage of the defense's weakness? That's where I think joint practices become really, really interesting for the tight end position, because it's going to be hard for me personally to judge how much success is, hey, the tight end room is really taking a step and Cam Ward is able to find these guys, and maybe this is a part of the offense that's been unlocked. Or also maybe that's just something the defense is going to always struggle with this season.
It's kind of like before joint practices a couple of years ago when, Andre Dillard was just getting decimated by all the edge rushers.
Wow, the pass rushers are great.
Yeah, the pass rushers are great. And then they had one of the worst pass rushing units in the NFL, like they've had for the last few years, and failed to want to correct it properly. But like, it's that. Is it the chicken or the egg? Like, which one 100%. Is it? Is it the bad? Is it the great tight end or the bad inside linebacker? Is it a mediocre tight end versus a bad line? Like, we don't know. We won't know until those joint practices. I do think that the Falcons, the Vikings, and the Seahawks,
Bucks.
right?
Tampa
Bucks, all provide good measures for our offense against those defenses.
Yeah. So the interesting part of this is it feels like there are two different scenarios if you did make a move, or even if you don't make a move. There is the Chig Okonkwo Gunnar Helm, Thomas Odukoya route that Easton's also written about at AtoZSports.com. We'll get to in the next hour. Or there is also you trade Chikakonkwo route and you go Gunnar Helm, Josh Wiley, David Martin Robinson. There is, I think, a scenario where that could materialize. I would be surprised if Chikakonkwo was traded at this point based on the explosive playability and just for me, improvisational ability of Cam Ward off script, finding someone who is, at the end of the day, a difficult matchup for defenses in terms of Chig's speed and athleticism, the way I think he could create with Cam off script. For the Chig perspective, how open are you to moving him? Because he's going to get you more value, but at the same time, if this season really is about developing Cam Ward and giving Cam Ward every tool possible to succeed, Chikakonkwo is a weapon in this offense that is seriously needing as many young pass-catching weapons as it can get.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday. I could be talked into a fourth-round pick. It wouldn't be difficult. I mean, it would be difficult to talk me into it. I'm holding out for a third-round pick, and I'm sure everybody in the chat's going to be like, oh, that's way too much. But I place a lot of value on Cam Ward's growth. And taking away a weapon is silly. It is just silly to take away a weapon. And I don't care that he's on the last year of his contract or anything like that, because to me, that doesn't really matter, because you may have a compensatory pick. You may be able to re-sign him, right? They may want to re-sign him.
Right.
Like, this idea that they are just going to automatically let him walk doesn't make any sense to me either. So to me, I look at it and I go, okay, obviously you're talking about a guy that I think has lived up to what proper expectations should be for a fourth-round pick. In fact, I think he's kind of exceeded them. We're talking about a guy who played the most snaps out of any tight end last year, and that means that he's blocking. Just because you play a lot of snaps as a tight end doesn't mean you're getting the ball a lot. Some offenses go outside, inside in their progressions. Some go inside, outside, and they really rely on tight end. You got Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. The San Francisco 49ers use a lot of that middle of the field for George Kittle, right? Like, not every offense is built the same. And the Cincinnati Bengals offense that Brian Callahan is kind of bringing in is kind of indicative of a team that is using a lot of 11 personnel. They're not going to target the wide receivers as much as people want them to, because look at this. If you stack up Chig's 2024 season to any tight end season, to any tight end for the Bengals from 2019 to 2024 had in a year. So any season, any tight end. He's had the second most targets to Gesicki last year. Gesicki had more targets. So he has the second most targets out of any tight end the Bengals have had since 2019. Third most yards to Gesicki in 2024 and Uzomah in 2021, just by like 50 yards to Uzomah. Because remember, Mason Rudolph missed a massive deep play in that final thing. There's 2 touchdowns because of bad quarterback plays left on the board.
Right.
And he had he's in a 5-way tie for third most touchdowns with 2 last year in the season. So, like, the Bengals just don't use a tight end.
Right.
But he's a good enough tight end for this team and what they need. And now you have Gunnar Helm. So now you have 2 pretty good, what should be 2 pretty good tight ends. Why go down to only maybe 1 good tight end?
Right.
Because if you trade away Chig, you are really relying on Gunnar Helm. And I'm a big Gunnar Helm believer, but then it's Gunnar Helm and nobody else.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. Right. I wish Mike Herndon was on Football Know the F Words, and I called about him.
To bring up his tweet. Yep.
Yeah, was his tweet. I agree with everything he starts saying. Then at the very end, he goes, I don't think it's drastically different. You don't see a drastic dip in production or whatever his wording was.
Yep. Between
Chig and DMR. And I'm like, then you're crazy. Because we know nothing about DMR. We do this every year as a Tennessee Titans fan base. And remember Caleb Murphy, how everybody went crazy over Caleb Murphy? I go, you guys are crazy. He's not going to be anything. And then everybody's like, oh, you got to keep him. You can't cut him. He'll hit waivers and someone will sign him up. And, like, nobody did. Like, guys, DMR has a chance to be okay,
right,
but that's all he can be. Chig still has a chance with better quarterback play. Chig has been on the down end of Ryan Tannehill. He's been with Malik Willis. He's been with Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. There is a chance for Chig to be marginally better than what he has been, but in a system that doesn't emphasize the tight end, it's not going to look sexy.
Right. Mike Hernan's exact tweet, word for word, says, not saying you trade Chig just to trade him. He's a useful player, but his contract is up after 2025, and they just drafted Helm. If Miami wants him and is willing to give up a decent pick, I'd listen. Would you get drastically different results if you play David Martin Robinson in the Chig role?
Yes. And I agree with everything else except for that.
Right.
Like, I agree that you should listen. It needs to be a really good pick for him,
sure,
and all that kind of stuff. And that pick may outweigh what you're talking about. But yes, you will get drastically different results.
Right.
And it's for a quarterback that loves to attack the middle of the field.
Window shopping.
Yeah.
His exact words.
Right.
And you watch him in one practice, and that was the first observation I had was, whoa, he is decisive when he puts his foot in the ground and just rips it between the hash marks. It's what made Xavier Restrepo such a productive wide receiver and possibility to make this team as well. Quick aside to all of this, and something that's not totally relevant, but something I think is at least a part of the equation. If I'm Chig Okonkwo, if I could push this, I'm looking at Jonnu Smith's production last year saying, man, it'd be nice to have that in a contract year.
Oh, he would fit so well down there. Because we were talking about Kyle Pitts, straight for Kyle Pitts if you're Miami.
100%.
And I'm like, okay, well, Chig's probably a cheaper version of Kyle Pitts, and he's the guy that could probably provide you, I don't know, pretty good, yards after catch down there. He would fit in really well with what they want to do scheme-wise. He's athletic.
He's similar to Jonnu Smith, too.
Yeah. The only thing he can't do is the rushing side of it.
Right.
And the blocking side. I think Jonnu's better than both.
I agree. 88 catches, 884, 8 touchdowns last season for Jonnu Smith in Miami. To me, the thing is, I totally agree with the first point you made. This season is just all about Cam Ward.
Yeah.
And the Titans should not be in the business of taking away things and players and ideas and concepts and athletes that make Cam Ward better. Because yes, while you are thinking for the future and you are planning for draft capital and things that make 2026 and 2027 a window opening phase of Tennessee Titans football as you close one stadium but open another. Although all those things are great, but that window only opens of competitiveness, of relevance, of battling for the division if Cam Ward takes some pretty significant steps from where he was the first day he walked in the building to the first day he walks in a new Nissan Stadium. You need Cam Ward to continue to mature and grow and develop. So the defensive trade pieces, to me, become more interesting as this season continues. And granted, there's no rush to do any of this because Miami will only get more desperate. You will only learn more about these players as pads come on during training camp, as preseason games happen. Maybe you have a situation where, crazy enough, David Martin Robinson is the guy that creates some kind of value. I don't see a scenario where that happens, but you never know who is going to be a training camp star that somebody wants to jump the lines and waivers to go get. And the example I always give, and it's an unfortunate one for the Titans because it crashed out so badly, was when they traded for Dennis Daly at the end of training camp. You want to beat the line? Titans don't have to beat the line. They're first in the waiver order, but for other teams that will watch your players play in preseason, or for Tampa and Atlanta who will get an extended situation to scout your players in joint practices, there's no rush to do any of this because guys are going to emerge and guys are going to fade, and values will change between now and the end of August. To where if Miami gets to the end of training camp, maybe that 7 and 6 pick swap for Josh Whyle becomes you give us a 7 and Josh Whyle will give you a 5.
Right.
There's no rush to do any of this. To me, I'm not trading Chig because it makes Cam Ward's job that much more difficult. And I'm not trading Josh Whyle right now because his value is as low as it's going to get at the moment.
Right.
I'm banking on Josh Whyle's value rising with a guy who's been a legitimate starting, not legitimate is tough for Will Levis, but a guy who's at least been a starting quarterback with him, who's going to get him the ball in preseason games of Will Levis.
I also look at it this way. You mentioned it. The running theme for this entire offseason has been like, oh, Cam Ward does a lot of stuff that we already do. Cam Ward said that. A lot of the terminology passes over.
For sure.
The same thing with Gunnar Helm. A lot of this stuff is going to carry over. But what also carries over was that what have we heard about all, OTAs or phase 2, phase 3, is that Cam Ward is attacking the middle of the field. They're attacking the middle field. Well, that's where he's most comfortable.
Right.
And who was the biggest beneficiary besides Xavier Restrepo in the middle of the field is Elijah Arroyo.
Right.
Chig is a better version of Elijah Arroyo from a receiving athleticism perspective. Now, for an experience perspective, that is a guy that Cam Ward can lean on and rely on. Why get rid of that just for an unknown of Gunnar Helm?
Love to hear your thoughts. 615-737-1045. Are you open to trading one of your tight ends to Miami before the 2025 season? 615-737-1045. We'll get to some of your reactions coming up next. Ramon Will, fueled by Scooters Coffee on 104.5 The Zone. Wrapping up the first half of your Tuesday morning, 615-737-1045. Coming up in a half hour, Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports. No Austin Price this morning. He is taking a little vacation, so we'll be back with him in a couple of weeks. Back for our regularly scheduled Tuesday 8:20 Vols discussion. Zach Lyons in for Ramon Foster. I'm Will Bowling. 615-737-1045. Zach, don't you just love it when the F&M Bank chat just leads you into exactly what you were about to talk about?
Oh, it's great.
It's just a fantastic thing.
Even I always like the requests. I'm like, just be patient. We're going to get there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even if I don't totally agree with this point, it does bring up a topic that I think is relevant when you talk about trading away starters on this Titans roster. Blake writes us and on YouTube says, I am not willing to trade a tight end. I don't want to take away options for the next coach in 2026. Well, first of all, Chikakonkwo is not under contract here for 2026. So if you were going to trade him away, that's part of the motivation why. But here's my thing about this. Two things can't be true at the same time. You can't be so willing to weaken your current roster and make things more challenging for your head coach in a pivotal point in his career, and also then hold the coach accountable when it's harder to get more out of the roster. To me, if Chikakonkwo really is traded, which again, I don't think is going to happen, but if the Titans continue to offload current talent that makes the roster worse, you're admitting that no one should be fired for then what happens in the short term. Am I off base in that?
No, because why keep Brian Callahan? Is it when Ren Carthon was fired, what did most of us say on the radio? If you're going to fire one, fire them both. Do a clean slate. Mm-hmm. And they ended up not keeping Ren Carthon. They ended up keeping Brian Callahan. Now, they kind of put Brian Callahan on notice a little bit. I mean, if you remember those reports, it was like, well, he's got to be better. Well, obviously, everybody's going to say that after you have the worst team in the NFL and you're the number one overall pick. But you also decided to keep him. So there's something that you believe in Brian Callahan, and then you go around on the media circuits and call this a 2 or 3 year rebuild. Well, you don't change foremans in the middle of a 2 or 3 year rebuild. If you do, you have a longer rebuild, right? I mean, or you're going to have more expensive prices, or you got delays and this and that because they're going to have their own decisions and their own input. You might as well just keep Brian Callahan. Now, Brian Callahan does have to improve. If he fields a team as bad or as worse than last year, then he's got to be fired. But if he gets to 7 wins, that's maybe not the expectation everybody really has or wants or this and that. But as long as he gets to like 6 or 7 wins and Cam Ward shows development over the course of the year, you keep him.
Well, and it's that part of it. It's the development piece. And to me, every time we have this conversation, not every 4 or 5 or 6 win season is created equally.
Right.
And you look at what saved...
Look at the Bengals last year,
the Bengals. And heck, look at what saved Dan Campbell at the beginning in Detroit.
Yeah.
What did they win? 3 of their last 4 games in a 4-win season?
Yeah.
And Mike Keith said this on our show so much this past fall, and I totally, totally agree. It's kind of my motto for the Titans this season. The arrow needs to be pointing up by the end of 2025. If they lose their first 10 games, but then down the stretch, win 4 of them, go 4-3 in the last 7 games. On paper, yes, this team would have only improved by 1 game, but you can't tell me that you go 4-3 in your last 7. You feel like, all right, trend it up. Cam Ward's making improvements. The offensive line is getting better. Like, that to me is why it's so difficult in July to take a look at just wins and losses and know how you got to those. Like, if the defense dominates and the defense carries this team and Cam Ward doesn't develop and the offense struggles, then I can make an argument that like 6 or 7 wins could still be a difficult season for Brian Callahan. Like, you are totally right in hitting the nail on the head that the offense has got to develop this season. Otherwise, we're having conversations about play calling duties. Right. We're having conversations about position coaches, about trading off more assets during the season, and what is Calvin Ridley's future. Like, it opens up a can of worms this franchise doesn't need to open, and it makes it that much more challenging if you get rid of a weapon that I think fits this offense, you and I were talking about it off air too, that fits your new quarterback in Chikakonko. All of that gets harder when you take away a starting piece of this offense.
Yeah, it's interesting because Blake Neely, who initiated this conversation, and he said for next year's coach, right? Well, he's under the impression here in a comment later on that says, I can't wait to see Callahan screw with Ward's head and style. Callahan's offense typically attacks outside the numbers, which is why his tight ends don't have big stats. Ward likes to attack the middle. Ward does like to attack the middle. This is actually something I've been working on for quite some time, is that he 46.7% of Cam Ward's pass attempts went into the center of the field, deep, intermediate, and short. Okay, all center of the field. Out of all the top quarterbacks last year, Joe Burrow attacked the middle of the field the third most, and that's been a big sticking point for his offenses throughout the Cincinnati era with Joe Burrow, is that he likes to attack the middle of the field. Their offenses attack the middle of the field, third highest rate. So that's bullcrap. The tight ends don't get the things because the tight ends, haven't been really good.
Right.
You see Mike Gesicki last year, he had 80-something targets in the middle of the field as a tight end and 600-something yards. But he's also he's Mike Gesicki.
Right.
Right. But it's been Parham, I think, is one of them. But CJ Uzomah can't even stay healthy. All these guys aren't that good tight ends. But you also have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins.
Yeah,
but they can also, Jamar Chase can take an intermediate crosser to the middle. They attack the middle of the field. They just do it not with their tight ends.
Well, and the best coaches at any level are going to utilize the skill set of the players that they have, especially in the NFL when you as the head coach don't get to pick who you have.
Right.
This isn't college football where you, the head coach, can go out and recruit the perfect tight end, the perfect wide receiver that fits your offense. In a draft-centered league, you kind of have to build around what the invisible hand, to use an economic term, kind of gives you. Right? And Cincinnati has not had that high-level tight end. You're 100% right. To match, obviously, the talent level of the two wide receivers they've had on the outside. The offense is predicated on outside passes because the offense had T. Higgins and Jamar Chase on the outside.
You'll know in November what this team is. Bill Belichick talked about this on the coaches podcast before he's got the UNC job, and Jordan got her hooks in him. But pretty much by Thanksgiving what your team is. September, your first 4 weeks, you're trying to figure out who you are, what you do well, what you don't do well. You're still going through that mode. October, you should have had all that ironed out, and you should be cruising more towards that goal of what you are and building towards that. November, by Thanksgiving, you are who you are. Right. You really don't change much from post-Thanksgiving all the way to the end of the season.
Right.
So you kind of know what you are by then. And it's a lot harder to make adjustments after Thanksgiving than it is in about September and October.
615-737-1045, a reset of the headlines if you've been sleeping in to start your Tuesday morning. Coming up, did the Pittsburgh Steelers get better yesterday with all the moves that they made? We'll react to that next. Hey, it's Will Bowling here. If you are looking for a home, if you are looking to relocate in a short amount of time, maybe you have found another property you want to purchase, you want to pay those two mortgages. Anyone who might need to access the equity from your current home to fund the down payment on a new one, my friend Bernie Gallerani is the guy for you, because Bernie Gallerani guarantees to sell your home in 30 days or less. If you listen to the show, you've listened to me, I've never endorsed any other real estate agent. I believe in Bernie Gallerani and his vision to sell your home. No risk to you. Bernie Gallerani will let you out of the contract at any time. He is the real estate agent who has the 30-day guarantee to sell your home, and if not, he will buy it from you. So if you are in a hurry to move on to that new home, to sell your current one, Bernie Gallerani is your guy. 615-428-2644. That's 615-428-2644. Check him out online, BernieGallerani.com. Call him on his personal cell phone, 615-428-2644.
It is 8:02. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Justin Hawkins. A big trade went down in the NFL yesterday between the Miami Dolphins and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers send safety Minka Fitzpatrick and a 2027 fifth-round pick in exchange for cornerback Jalen Ramsey, tight end Jonnu Smith, and a 2027 seventh from Miami. The Steelers also signed Jonnu Smith to a one-year, $12 million extension, and they will also take on the bulk of Jalen Ramsey's contract of $26.6 million this season. Some big moves yesterday in the NHL. The Toronto Maple Leafs traded Mitch Marner to the Vegas Golden Knights for forward Nicholas Roy. Marner, in turn, signed an an 8-year, $96 million contract. And then also back-to-back Stanley Cup champs Florida Panthers signs 37-year-old Brad Marchand to a 6-year, $30 million extension. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you got to go to USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Ramon Will at 104.5 The Zone into the second half of your Tuesday morning. The Tuesday that kind of feels a little bit like a Thursday here on the station. 615-737-1045 is our number. He is Zach Lyons of Cover 2 with Blaine and Zach in for Ramon this morning. Ramon will be back with us next week. Justin Hawkins spinning the hits behind the glass. I'm Will Bowling, and we stream the show live for you on 104.5 The Zone TV, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. New month, almost a new holiday later this week. And Zach Lyons, I've got good news for the people this morning.
Oh.
NFL football is played this month.
It is July 31st, sort of.
Sort of, kind of. American tackle football will be played in the month of July. Chargers and Lions is 30 days away. The NFL preseason on July 31st. We made it. Football's back, baby.
Oh, I can't wait. Of course, really for us, when training camp starts, or like the week leading in training camp, that's when you start kicking things up.
That's right.
I can't wait.
It absolutely is. I am excited just to hear whistles and watch ladder drills again.
Yeah.
No one loves ladder drills like Nashville. Talk about this with Lucas Panzica, who's going to join us at 9:20 later in the show. Just the horde of vertical phone cameras at training camp. I can't wait for it. I'm so
Are you anti-vertical, or are you a horizontal filmer?
No, I'm not anti. It's just it has become the way of the world. I don't knock anybody for it, for sure. It's the way to do it. But See, I'm
a horizontal guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I can hold it, I can press the button, I can do it one-handed, and I keep it steady. For me, it's easier to keep steady.
Right. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
It's more about the TikTokification.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Of football coverage and Instagram Reels and Facebook, whatever it's called on Facebook. I don't know. I'm too young to be on Facebook.
It's
only
a reel.
27. Yeah. Facebook Reel too? Okay. Good to know.
It's all part of Meta.
Yeah, that's fair. Meta, that's right. Meta, X, Facebook, and Twitter.
Threads.
Yeah, exactly. I need less social media in my life, not more of it.
Yes, I'm with you on that.
As a rule. We talk about it to lead off the show this morning. Did the Steelers get better yesterday? Trading corner Jalen Ramsey, the Dolphins, and tight end Jonnu Smith to the Steelers for safety Minkah Fitzpatrick in a late-round pick swap. What is the fit, Zach? How does this work out for Pittsburgh? Because you are of the opinion that the Steelers did get better yesterday.
Yeah, it's interesting. They're going to need to rely heavily on their run game and defense. And listen, the Pittsburgh Steelers are kind of known for both those things.
Sure.
But they got Caleb Johnson, who is a great fit for what Art Smith wants to do. He's the running back out of Iowa that they drafted. So they are going, between him and Jalen Warren, they're going to be able to rely on that run game because Aaron Rodgers' mobility isn't what it used to be. Now they got DK Metcalf, they get a little bit bigger. Now they have two tight ends, right? They got Pat Freiermuth and they got Jonnu Smith as well. And to me, that also helps Art Smith and allows him to do what he wants to do. And Aaron Rodgers will be able to attack the middle of the field with two big tight ends. He's going to have George Pickens. DK Metcalf. We'll see if Roman Wilson is able to step up. The Steelers are known for finding wide receivers, and Roman Wilson got injured, so he's kind of been a forgotten man back there. But when you look at what this actually did in terms of how they can attack the opposing offenses in the AFC North, because that's the big thing.
Right.
You got to get through those offenses to win that division, to set yourself up for as much success as you can. And I look at a team like Baltimore, and with the Steelers' defense, which is really, really good when you think about it.
Sure.
Like you got Derek Harmon, But behind him, you have Logan Lee.
Right.
And a lot of people may not know Logan Lee as a household name, but he is a good defensive end in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Keanu Benton up at the middle. Cameron Hayward is still playing at a very, very high level. Then you got Yahya Black behind them.
Right.
You have TJ Watt on the outside, Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson on the middle with Malik Harrison backing them up, and Carson Bruner, who's actually a pretty good rookie, backing them up. Alex Highsmith, Jack Sawyer behind them, who is the most Steelers pick
100%.
in America.
100%.
Darius Slay, Deshaun Elliott, Juan Thornhill, Joey Porter Jr., and Jalen Ramsey. And behind those guys are guys that would start on most teams.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at that team, I look at a team like that and say, okay, DeAndre Hopkins, Zay Flowers, and Rashad Bateman, oh, yeah, our corners can live one-on-one with all those guys all day long. Doesn't matter where you put them.
Mm-hmm.
So guess what? We can do whatever we want to try to stop Derrick Henry, who makes that engine go down there.
Right.
That is a great setup for them.
Mm-hmm.
We already talked about the Bengals being able to maybe now play a little bit more coverage with them,
right?
Because you don't really have to worry about their running back. So you can provide a little bit more guys to clog up some passing lanes to slow them down.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at the Browns.
Cleveland.
I mean, just give me a break. I like Cedric Tillman, but I mean Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy,
yeah, exactly.
And I don't even know who their third wide receiver is off the top of my head. Going up against these guys, yeah, give me a break.
Yeah, exactly. I am with you on that. To me, it is one of those also follow the money situations on how the Steelers will deploy Jalen Ramsey. Last season, Jalen Ramsey, according to Next Gen Stats, allowed 0.9 yards per coverage snap. That was better than the outside cornerback average. He did that mostly lining up as an outside corner. He was wide 78% of the time. He also rushed the passer 36 times with Miami last year. That was the most of any season in his career. He is a willing run defender as well on the outside. And when you talk about a team whose pathway to winning the division is beating Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry on the ground, you have to have willing run defenders on the perimeter and really at all levels of your defense. Jalen Ramsey is not brought there, obviously, to be a run defender. He's brought there to cover receivers. But that, to me, is the positive as well in bringing him in. He is willing to do the dirty work that you have to do to be in a Mike Tomlin defense as well.
Yeah, and I think he's a versatile piece, right? I mean, 'cause, maybe there's times where you put, Deshaun Elliott in the middle of the field in the linebacker spot, and then you put Jalen Ramsey out somewhere else. Like, being able to confuse and make anything you can do to make a quarterback take one beat longer is a win for the defense. And for
especially
Lamar
TJ Watt.
And with Lamar Jackson, it's a little hard, right? Because he's a guy that can beat you with his legs. But now you have added athleticism with Jalen Ramsey, who may be able to get maybe push Lamar Jackson to another defender.
Right.
Because he's clogging up a running lane or he's clogging up a passing lane. So for the Steelers, they got better on defense and they got better on offense too. Because, like I said, you're kind of relying on like Robert Woods and Calvin Austin and Ramon Wilson right now on this team. And nothing against those guys, but they're not the impact player that Jonnu Smith is. We've talked about Chig, the last segment. Jonnu Smith was the more impactful player for the Tennessee Titans. Chig is the more productive player, but over 700 of his yards have come when they're trailing.
Right.
Jonnu Smith has like 10 touchdowns when they're leading. He is a more impactful player.
Big plays, right. Consistently.
So to me, you're looking for impact. You have a guy that can block. He can help out Troy Fontenot, who should be a good right tackle, but he had injuries, right? So you don't know what he's going to be. But you also got Pat Freiermuth too. To me, this makes all the sense in the world. And as long as Aaron Rodgers can A, stay healthy, and B, not have that Russell Wilson into the season where they rattled off 6 straight losses, I think, last year.
Right.
This should be a team that come around November, December, we're talking about possibly being a number 1 overall seed, at least in the discussion.
Yeah, I think so too. And what I mean too by following the money is like $25 million that they are on the hook for. Pittsburgh at 26.6 to be exact. Talk about, can he be a nickel corner? Can he be kind of a hybrid safety? Like, to me, you're paying a guy $26.6 million. Jalen Ramsey's going to play outside corner for Pittsburgh.
Don't forget Cordarrelle Patterson's out there, too.
That's right. That's right. So, interesting team to say the least. And we talk about him a lot on this show, partly because Ramon Foster played there for 11 seasons.
This is probably the most love the Steelers have gotten.
Right.
And he's not here.
Right. I know. We got a comment in the F and Big Chat from one of our resident Steelers fans that said Ramon would be smiling right now. That's right. I almost tasked him to send us a voice memo of just his raw thoughts on the trade, but you'll just have to wait around for that one Monday when he comes back from vacation. Coming up, Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports is going to join us. He's written a lot about the different options the Titans have in deploying their own tight ends and the trade value of Chigakonkwo and Josh Wiley. The big discussion we just had in hour number 2 as it pertains to Miami, who now has an opening at the tight end position. We'll cover that. We'll cover all the Titans headlines with Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports coming up next. Ramon Will is fueled by Scooters Coffee on 104.5 The Zone, locally owned near you in Rivergate, Smyrna, Brentwood, White House, or Mount Juliet. Amazing people, amazing drinks, amazingly fast. With Zach Lyons filling in for Ramon Foster this morning, I'm Will Bowling. Pleased to be joined by Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports, talking about the Titans, talking about tight ends, talking about trades, the 3 T's, if you will, on a Tuesday. There's a 4th one. What's up, Easton? How are you, man?
What's going on, Will? Good to hear from you, man.
You as well. And wanted to talk about all this tight end stuff.
I don't get a good morning? What is this?
It's I'm happy. I said I'm happy to see Will.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the things that I'm happy to be here.
Okay, I'll remember that for
Thank
later.
you, Easton. Point Easton. Great. Put him in the heavy rotation for our guests here on the show. That's one thing everyone learns. You just praise
Good morning,
me.
Zach. Good
You come
morning,
on as
Zach.
much as you want. Easton, the tight end position's interesting right now. I know you've been writing about it before the Jonnu Smith trade happened yesterday in Miami, but the trade value, the options, Chigakonkwo, Josh Wiley, how realistic is it in your mind that the Titans trade one of those two guys, Chig or Josh Wiley, and is Miami the now most likely fit for one of those moves?
Yeah, definitely most likely. And in terms of how likely a trade is, if Miami's interested, I'd say it's relatively likely. Listen, the Titans have a surplus at tight end, and that's kind of the end of the list of positions they have a surplus at. And the situation there is that they're pretty good at the top. They're pretty deep. Josh Wiley in particular is the guy that I think that they should be trying to upsell to Miami or anybody else who will listen. He's somebody that, I have been wrong about. If you asked me a month ago, I would have told you that he was somebody that was going to make the team. Today, I don't necessarily think that that's the case anymore. And so, I think just at his best, he's a redundancy on this team. And they can get what they could get from the best Josh Wiley from the other players that they have. And so I would be looking to send him to Miami if they're interested. I don't know what kind of investment Miami's looking to make, right? Because what is Miami this year? I'm not sure anybody really knows. They're not a team that's going all in, or if they, are, I think that's pretty foolish. So what kind of investment are they going to want to make in this trade that they've publicly put out there that they're interested in making? When they got Jonnu in the first place, they were kind of shopping in the proverbial bargain bin in free agency, signed him to, I think, a 2-year, $8 million and change deal that was relatively reasonable, and they end up flipping his value essentially. If they're looking to shop in the bargain bin again, that's what a Josh Wiley trade would be to me, and I actually think he would make some sense for them, and I think that they have a situation that would maybe set him up for the most success because they would not need him to be an inline blocker, which is something that he has struggled with. They have guys that can do that, and so he could just focus on being a zone-beating receiver type out of the Y alignment, because that's not a team that he's going to see a whole lot of man coverage on either because of the speed that they have on that team with Achane and Waddle and Tyreek Hill and all those guys. So defenses, you can't really afford to man those guys up. He'll be able to just sit in the soft parts of zone, be a massive target the way that he is at 6'7", and I think that would probably get the best out of him. So if I were the Titans, I'd be calling Miami today to see if that's something that they'd be interested in doing.
Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports, our guest. So, Easton, talking about that role that Wiley has played and now adding Gunnar Helm into this room, how much of Josh Wiley's responsibilities are just one-for-one replaced by Gunnar Helm? And how do you see him adding value and adding his skill set into this room? Where is he valuable to Cam Ward in this offense?
Yeah, I'd say Gunnar's role is going to be similar to what Josh did. He's going to be in that Y alignment. He's going to be a receiver type first. And I think he's going to be really valuable to Cam. He's kind of been my pick since the draft for the guy most likely in this draft class, besides Cam, to make an immediate impact. We don't really always consider tight ends as the guys that are going to be ready-made for the NFL because it's a pretty difficult role, all things considered, in the NFL. You have to learn a couple of different jobs. But with Gunnar as a receiver primarily, I think that he's somebody that's going to be out of the box, ready to go, and make an impact on this offense, especially once he is the second guy in line behind Chig and is involved in the offense, I think, pretty early on. So I think that he's somebody that Cam's going to lean on. Yeah, Gunnar was the leading receiver at Texas last year, a good team with a number of good options available to them, and I don't think that was a fluke. I think that's because he's a guy that knows how he's got that tight end savvy to just get open. He's a little bit more of a threat after the catch than I think folks realize statistically. So he's somebody you want to get the ball relatively often, and I think that the Titans are going to do that.
Easton, when you talk about Chig, I think there is a weird narrative around Chig, and it probably started after his rookie year because we were talking about it earlier, is that the yards per route run that he had in that first year kind of like created this narrative that he was going to be something that likely was never going to happen. But as far as the fourth round pick, it seems like a guy that is at least at the very minimum lived up to a fourth round pick of a tight end, a guy that you can rely on to be healthy, played all the snaps last year, the most snaps in the NFL by tight end, which is kind of wild to think about. And this Bengals offense, they don't, that Brian Callen has kind of brought over with them, they don't really do much with the tight end. What are your expectations for Chig? And what do you think if he were the one to be traded, where would your kind of like bare minimum return be? Because obviously the Miami Dolphins, terrible depth everywhere. Your confusion about Miami and what they are is totally warranted when you look at this roster. But at the end of the day, you want to give Cam Ward as many weapons as possible. And I do think there is a drastic dip between what you got out of Chig last year and what actually DMR is, because DMR kind of feels like the Caleb Murphy of tight ends right now.
Well, I absolutely agree with you that I'm not sure what value moving Chig. First of all, I think you're kind of alluding to the number of things we saw on the internet yesterday about what people think Chig is worth, what his value to this team is. I think people are, I don't know what's wrong. I think that they're largely wrong and undervaluing what Chig means to this team, what he is as a player. He is not without his warts, right? He goes through periods of inconsistency. He is somebody that may very well be passed up this year by rookie Gunnar Helm. But he's still a starter, right? Like, he's a bona fide starter in the NFL. He's clearly the best tight end on this team right now. And he's somebody that I think his play style in particular is going to mesh pretty well with what Cam Ward wants to do. Like, when you watch Cam in college, he loves to throw the heck out of the seam ball. And the player that runs the most and the best of those types of routes on this team is Chig from that F alignment. So I think there's a chance that, I wouldn't be surprised if we looked up midseason and he kind of looks like Elijah Arroyo did in that Miami offense. The two of them have a pretty significant connection. Now, if he were the one that they considered trading, which, when they make that phone call about Wiley, I would imagine Chig would come up as well and just see if there's any interest there. I would call to see what Miami would be willing to pay. The reason why I don't think it will happen and why I probably wouldn't do it is because the Titans, at least in my opinion, should not be selling Chig just to sell him. I think that there's a difference between what Miami would want to pay, which is based on his worth on paper, versus what Tennessee would want to get out of that trade, which would be more about getting the worth of the opportunity cost of not having him in the offense. And I absolutely agree with you that if they were to move on from Chig in a trade and DMR became that starting F guy, I think best case scenario, that's still a pretty clear and significant teardrop down in production. I like DMR, but I think that's a real leap, and I think that's underselling what Chig can be and what he's established himself to be. I mean, this is a guy that the past 2 years has been like the number 2 receiver in terms of production on the whole team. Now, there's like a lot of sadness involved in that, and there's a lot of garbage time production involved in that, but he's somebody that has done things for this team the past 2 years, and to your point, has been available for this team the past 2 years, and has played for some really crappy offenses and crappy quarterbacks the past 2 years. So my bare minimum, and you and I talked about this yesterday, I would want a day 2 pick. And even then, I'd probably be a little bit uncomfortable about it, because to me, the number one most important thing in the world, and I don't know how this wouldn't be the case for everybody, is Cam Ward's development. Nothing else really matters to me. And Chig is going to be a big part of that, whether you like it or not, when he's here. And to not have him, I think, would be to set Cam up poorly, which I would need significant compensation to say okay to that. And I just don't see Miami offering that unless they just have some love for Chig that we don't know about.
Going to the other side of the ball, the pass rush. I'm doing some quick math here, and my math may be a little wrong. Exactly. Because I'm looking at 6 players, and maybe you can get 33 sacks if you get their career years ahead of them. That includes maybe giving Femi 2 more sacks than what he got in college.
All of their career years in the same year?
All their career years in the same year.
Okay.
But 33 sacks from 6 different people. Where's the pass rush really going to come from? And what do you think of this philosophy of, hey, we're getting bigger, and we're maybe possibly, because the big talk has been like everybody's like healthier. Right. Where do you really think this pass rush is going to come from?
I mean, I'll call you when I find it. I don't know. I think it's going to come from the interior of the defensive line. Like, I think Jeffrey Simmons is going to be relied upon to be the most effective rusher on this team when you adjust for capability based on alignment. Like, it's harder to get to the quarterback from the inside, but I think that he's going to be the most effective at his role because he's going to have to be, because listen, I like Femi a lot. I like him more than you do when we talked about the draft and those decisions, but I see him very clearly as a 2 to 3 year bet, as a guy he's not the type of player you want to have to rely on in year one, and the Titans have set themselves up to have to, unfortunately. So I actually think that's, he's somebody that may be a fan disappointment this year unfairly. And then Draymond Jones is a guy who on paper should be an upgrade over what Harold Landry was for you last year, but it's marginal. And also, he's never been asked to be the 1A pass rusher on a team, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a role that we've not seen him in. And sometimes, that bump in responsibility can diminish the effectiveness of a player. And then we know what Arden Key is, right? He's at his best as a rotational third. When you can make him a designated pass rush type, then he is a useful player. But when he's being forced to be your number 1 or your number 2, then his effectiveness goes down as well. So I really do think they're going to lean on Tavondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons and Sebastian Joseph Day to cause havoc in the middle of the defensive line. And this is why I keep talking about the secondary so much, is because I think if the Titans, particularly their cornerback room, doesn't play pretty well this year in tandem with what I think is a very good safety room, and they are able to make coverage a relative strength of theirs, I could see this defense falling apart, right? Because the way that teams who cannot rush the passer succeed on defense is by making it difficult for you to find open guys. And if you can't cover and you can't rush the passer, then that's what we call a bad defense. You're cooked. So it's a tenuous situation for the Titans. And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe the whole getting bigger thing is the key that I'm just missing, but I'll believe it when I see it.
We're on the phone with the Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports.
Easton, when you look at the wide receiver room, and I know you've written a lot about it, and everybody's writing a lot about it because there are so many legitimate options who could make this roster. You wrote about Bryce Oliver being more of a lock than I think what people really think. How confident are you that he makes this roster out of camp at this point?
Oh, I think there's a 96% chance he makes this roster.
Wow.
As a role player, right? And the same way that I'm pretty certain that Van Jefferson is going to make this team as a role player. Just because they're a lock doesn't mean that, I'm bumping them up my depth chart. But Bryce Oliver he's probably going to be a core special teamer on this team. And that's one of the biggest disconnects, I think, between what the public understands about football teams and the way that coaches look at football teams. And that's understandable, right? I don't think fans are, necessarily inclined to value special teamers the same way that coaches do, because the coaches are the ones relying on the special teamers to not let the special teams be a disaster like it was for a lot of the season last year for the Titans. But a core special teamer can be worth their weight in gold to a coaching staff. And there's only 2 or 3 of those guys on a roster, on any given roster, and I think that he's going to be one of them. I think that the way that he came in, especially as a gunner last year, and it was a big part of helping solidify the special teams down the stretch, by the point that nobody really cared about it. But it did start to stabilize there at the end. And I think that he was a big part of that. And I also think that when you look at what he did, again, kind of in garbage time of the season for the Titans on offense, he also was a relatively useful receiver in a rotational role player capacity. So, we've heard Brian Callahan kind of allude to the fact that he could just be the new NWI. I think that is spot on. I think that he is positioned to become the new NWI with speed. He is faster than Nick Westbrook ever was or ever will be. And so I think that he could be an NWI plus if he figures it out. Now, Nick didn't really get his flowers from the fan base until he was in year 3 and 4. And so maybe Bryce is still kind of coming along in that way, but I think that he's a lock for this team. I think that he's a big part of the special teams, and I think that he's somebody that's going to be around for a while.
Easton, you've been a big poo-pooer of the importance of backup quarterback. And one of my main tenets of a backup quarterback is, first off, he can provide you an ability to win games, but you can also learn with so many young new pieces, you don't stunt their development as well by having a bad backup quarterback. And you said that's kind of like a sign of dysfunction for a franchise. And I would say they would be the opposite of not being able to develop your young pieces because you decided to go cheap with a Tim Boyle or Brandon Allen at backup quarterback. Don't you think that is more dysfunctional than, hey, let's get a cheap, better backup quarterback that allows, the guys, if for whatever thing happens to Cam Ward, it allows our younger pieces, we learn more about them.
Right. Well, to be clear about what I believe, I think that backup quarterback is overrated on bad teams, not in general. On good teams, I think it's maybe the most underrated position in football. So with the Titans, we're going to lump rebuilding teams in with the bad teams here. The teams that if and when their quarterback goes down, God forbid, they have no reason to win games. I believe the Titans are in that camp, and that's why I think that having a backup quarterback that can win you games does you absolutely no good. As for the dysfunction that I alluded to, I do want to be clear. The primary dysfunction that I was referencing there is this idea that maybe the reason you need a good backup is because the coaching staff might need to win some games to save their neck. I think that it's dysfunctional, or a sign of dysfunction for a franchise, if that's the difference between a coach keeping their job or losing their job, right? Like, I think if the owner or the GM or whoever is responsible for that sees the fact that, they won a couple of games with, decent backup guy versus tanked it out because Cam Ward went down, unfortunately, and, we're on to next year as the difference between whether we hire or fire a staff, that's dysfunctional to me. But as for the ability to develop players, I definitely hear your point there, and that's still an important thing because quarterback is one of 22 guys on the starting lineup. But I think if you have somebody that is a quote unquote bad backup like Tim Boyle or Brandon Allen, if they're a known quantity and they're not erratic in the way that they play, I still think there's a way to develop the rest of your team down that stretch while losing games. I think that there's a way to get by with consistent but underwhelming quarterback play. Is it perfect? Like, are you going to get the best out of your players? No, but when your starter goes down, that's you. No matter who you put in there, you're not going to get the best out of those players anymore because backups are backups for a reason. And I think not winning worthless games is worth it at the cost of maybe not getting the best development out of the rest of your players, because ultimately I think a coaching staff worth their salt can still find a way to bring the rest of the team along as they look forward to the next season.
Maybe not back-to-back seasons, though. I mean, let's think about it here. These games are worthless to us, but they're not worthless to the other 52 players in the building. Yeah. And I look at it this way. Brandon Allen and Tim Boyle are both the definition of erratic. So they're both erratically bad.
Well, it depends on the timeline too, right? Like if we're talking, and again, hopefully Cam Ward plays 17 games and the entire conversation is null and void. But if Cam Ward were to go down for the year in week 3, that changes my opinion of the situation a little bit, just because
Sure.
that is a long time. Like, I would probably endorse going and finding somebody to be a more stabilizing force. I would still probably try to toe that line between guy that can be good enough to develop guys but still lose games. But if we're talking about a guy going down like Joe Burrow did his rookie year later on in the season in November or December, and you're just trying to get through the last couple games of the year, then I think you should try to be as bad as possible, frankly.
He is Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports, joining us and covering the Tennessee Titans at NFL A to Z Sports and at Easton Freeze, where you follow him on Twitter. Great stuff, man. I really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Easton Freeze with us here this morning, talking Titans and covering a ton of stuff there. Really good stuff with Easton, as always. Coming up, again, mock draft season never really takes any time off. But instead of using what Matt Miller wrote about the Titans as, here's who he projects the Titans to take, it's July 1st. There's a senior season that needs to be played. We'll address the position that Zach brought up with Easton, address the position that Matt Miller has the Titans addressing at edge rusher. How many cycles are the Titans away from feeling good about their pass rushers? We'll talk about that next. Ramon Will, 104.5 The Zone, wrapping up hour 3 on this Tuesday morning, 615-737-1045. I'll reset the headlines for you coming up. Get to our poll results on trading tight ends to begin hour 4 coming up here in just about 15 minutes. But I wanted to look, Zach, at the Matt Miller mock draft, not because I'm super interested in the specific player. This time of year, I'm more interested in what position the Titans are going to need this time next year. It feels obvious, again, for whatever the 10th time, it's Groundhog Day. The Titans are going to need edge help in 2026. And TJ Parker, the defensive end out of Clemson, is the guy that Matt Miller mentions here as the top edge rusher in this class. We'll talk more about him in a minute, Zach, but I think the overall first question is, how far away are we from feeling like the Titans are in a comfortable spot, in a settled spot with an edge rusher room that they really like?
2 to 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Let's think about it. The only ones they have under contract next year are Femi Oladejo and Jalen Harrell.
Mm-hmm.
Arden Key, last year of his contract. Draymond Jones, only 1 year. Lorenzo Carter, only 1 year. That's not good.
No.
Let's be honest. And I have no clue what Jalen Harrell is going to be. I have no high expectations for him or anything like that. But then you're relying on generating pressure and sacks from Jeffrey Simmons, who's never been a double-digit guy, from Tavondre Sweat, who's a push-the-pocket kind of guy, kind of a havoc creator, Sebastian Joseph Day, who's not a pass rusher. He's not Danico Autry.
Mm-hmm.
There is no... to me, it feels like, okay, they draft TJ Parker next year in this scenario, or any edge rusher that may, jump off the page.
Sure.
Okay, you still probably have to sign 2 edge guys, and they can't be Draymond. They can be Draymond Jones. It can't be Lorenzo Carter.
Right. Exactly.
It can be, if you want to re-sign Draymond Jones and Arden Key, all for it.
You're not looking for role
draft a guy. You got to draft a guy at that point, because when you look at the guys that are going to be available next year. We're talking TJ Watt, probably going to get an extension or traded and get an extension.
Right.
Micah Parsons, probably going to get an extension. Trey Hendrickson, big money guy over that may not want to come here. He's probably going to want to go somewhere to get have a chance at a Super Bowl. Zach Allen, who I'm sure Denver will re-sign.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go down to Malcolm Kuntz, Kwity Paye, and Arden Key, who are all the same kind of guy. There is nobody in free agency.
Rotational, right, exactly.
So you have to draft and develop and retain, and I think that edge could be a position. When you start looking at all the impact positions they kind of filled last year, edge seems like a position they could double dip in the draft. And that speeds up your timeline, but if you only draft one guy, you're talking about 2 or 3 years.
So the interesting part of this, and you brought up Trey Hendrickson and free agents wanting to be here. That is where the Titans exceeding expectations in 2025 is really useful. And making it a destination for free agents, because wherever you look, whether it's over the cap or spot track, the broad perspective on the Titans' future cap is they've got money to spend.
Yeah.
Close to $100 million available for 2026. There are not as many. I mean, you're starting to get on the back end of some bad John Robinson contracts and a lot of money that was committed to aging or often injured or just not very good players. You've got options in the future, but the way you sway a Trey Hendrickson type to take you seriously in the future is by Cam Ward being exciting in the present. Yeah. And that is where a quarterback legitimately, look at Washington and Jaden Daniels and how quickly Washington became a destination for people this past offseason. I want to go be a part of that because they've got a quarterback. Cam Ward hitting does wonders for you, which is ultimately why they decided that was more valuable than trading back and getting an Abdul Carter and checking that box now, but then not being as attractive down the road because you've got major question mark at quarterback.
Yeah, you're talking, this team has a much better outlook with Cam Ward as the quarterback and this edge rushing group than it would with Will Levis and this edge rushing group plus Arden Key or Abdul Carter instead of
Oladejo.
Oladejo. You look at it and go, this is a better outlook for the team. And I understand there would be other players involved in those picks, and maybe you'd have some future picks, and maybe you're okay with Abdul Carter plus whoever your quarterback is next year.
Right.
But this team is trying to build momentum. Like, everybody kind of looks at it like a 2 or 3 year rebuild. Well, your 2 or 3 year rebuild, that means you're not going to be good. You can rebuild on the fly,
right,
and be successful and jumpstart and kickstart stuff.
Exactly.
Just because you're rebuilding does not mean that you have to settle for a bad team. Does not mean you have to push quarterback or push this. It's going to be really hard for them to be a good team if L'Jarius Sneed gets injured. He is the Jenga piece of this entire defense. And if you heard what he said over the weekend, it was, I'm as healthy as I've ever been, and I got to remind everybody just who L'Jarius Sneed is. When I played that clip for Blaine Bishop, his eyes lit up. It was like Christmas morning, he opened up a Nintendo back in the 80s. Sure. And like he said, that's what you want to hear. And he goes, I'm betting on L'Jarius Sneed.
That'd be great.
And so if he can erase a receiver, that opens things up for everybody else. And like we talked about with the Steelers, making a quarterback hold the ball a beat longer changes everything. And specifically for a team, Brian Callahan called this team a blitz-heavy team. And maybe that's going to be new for this year because they were not a blitz-heavy team last year. And under Mike Vrabel, they were not a blitz-heavy team. They were all about simulated pressures and just sending four. They were that last year, too. They were in the bottom in blitz percentage, but bottom in sack percentage because they don't have edge rushers. And when you don't have quality edge rushers, you have to blitz to get pressure.
100%. And that is where on the Sneed thing, talking about the Titans' pathway to being frisky. It's like my goal for this team in 2025. Just be frisky. Win some games you're not supposed to. Give me some game-winning drives from Cam Ward. Develop your quarterback and be frisky. In 2025, that's the pathway towards that happening. Every team in the NFL has a chance. Sometimes it's a really narrow pathway. Sometimes it's as wide as the interstate on both sides. Every team has a pathway to success.
Right.
The Titans' pathway to success requires a healthy and productive L'Jarius Sneed. Like every team has a list of players that just can't get hurt in order for them to be successful. Some teams, that list is just the quarterback. Other teams like the Titans, that list is 7 or 8 deep of players that just aren't allowed to get injured. Cam Ward can't get injured. L'Jarius Sneed can't get injured. Jeffrey Simmons can't get injured. Draymond Jones, I might even put on that list. Like
neither tackles can get injured.
Neither tackle. Like there are a lot of players the Titans could not be successful without that person being productive. L'Jarius Sneed has to be number one on that list, considering the lack of rush that they have and the fact the rush and coverage is going to have to work together and kind of be carried by coverage.
His presence is just such a huge domino.
It is. It absolutely is. We did all that. Didn't even talk about TJ Parker, the guy that
and I love TJ Parker.
Absolutely.
21 years old, or will be 21 in September. Good young pass rusher. Near the tops last year in tackles for loss, which is a great stat that translates to the NFL.
Nice. And 6 forced fumbles.
Yeah,
last season as well for him. That Clemson feels like Clemson again. One of the themes of the show this morning. 615-737-1045. We got Lucas Panzica coming up at 9:20. He'll hop in early before the Buck Rising show to talk some Nashville SC with us as NSC gets ready for Philadelphia this weekend. A massive game at Geodis Park. We'll preview with Lucas. Plus, coming up, a reset on our morning question of the day and our poll. Are you willing to trade one or either of your tight ends? That's next.
It is 9:03. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Justin Hawkins. The big headlines in the NFL yesterday with a big trade between the Miami Dolphins and the Pittsburgh Steelers as the Steelers send safety Minka Fitzpatrick and a 2027 fifth-round pick in exchange for cornerback Jalen Ramsey, tight end Jonnu Smith, and a 2027 seventh-round pick from Miami. The Steelers also will sign Jonnu Smith to a one-year, $12 million contract extension, and they'll also take on the bulk of Ramsey's $26.6 million contract this year. Some big moves in the NHL yesterday. The Toronto Maple Leafs traded Mitch Marner to the Vegas Golden Knights for forward Nicholas Roy. Marner, in turn, signed an 8-year, $96 million contract. And then also back-to-back Stanley Cup champs, Florida Panthers signed 37-year-old Brad Marchand to a 6-year, $30 million extension. And also, happy Bobby Bonilla Day. Bonilla is set to collect another $1.193 million from the New York Mets today as part of a deferred payment agreement that started back in 2011. He will continue to get paid each July 1st through the year 2035. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you got to go to USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Ramon Will, 104.5 The Zone is fueled by Scooters Coffee. Listen, calories do not count on the weeks of holidays. It just doesn't. Cinnamon rolls that are warm, that are just going to fall apart when you stick the fork in them in the best possible way. The cream cheese icing, it's what you need at Scooters Coffee to start your morning. And even better, they're locally owned, Scooters Coffee in Middle Tennessee. Rivergate, Smyrna, Brentwood, White House, or Mount Juliet, or you scoot on down to pick you up a coffee, an energy drink, a smoothie, you name it, they have got it. Amazing people, amazing drinks, amazingly fast into the fourth hour on this muggy Tuesday morning in Middle Tennessee. Zach Lyons in for Ramon Foster. Justin Hawkins, our producer. I'm Will Bowling. This is kind of, Zach, the midway point of your day.
This is.
Because you're 3 hours down, 3 more to go.
3 more to go. I'm ready to rock and roll. I get a little bit of break. I get a 3-hour break. So, I mean, just 3 is following me around all day today.
Are you a nap person? Like, are you going to find a
there's
dark room?
no way I can nap.
Okay.
My body does not allow me to nap
Really?
for whatever
Okay.
reason. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, I'm like, last time I filled in for the show when you were out, I went all the way to like 10 p.m. I was just up all day.
Nice. Wow. Yeah, no, I will need a nap today, and I do every day. I'm literally like a kindergartner. I have to have nap time. I have to have nice juice boxes. No, just the nap time. But it's I don't know what it is. I was the same way until I went to Tennessee and I started running 6 a.m. practices on the track and cross country team, and that taught me to nap because my body literally was like, buddy, what are you doing to yourself? Like, just sit down and close your eyes. Like Sunday morning was long run day, where coach put Sunday morning practices because they didn't want us going out on Saturday nights, of course. So we had 7 a.m. Sunday long runs where you either go 15, 13, or 11 miles. And I would do that. I would come back, get a Gus's Good Time Deli sandwich, take a nap, and then wake up to watch the Titans every Sunday. That was my Sunday routine, and it taught me how to nap. It was great.
Man, that sounds delightful.
It was lovely.
See, my problem was that I sleep until like noon. So like in college. So that was a terrible habit to build.
I did in my post college athletics days, since I kind of got both lives in college, I did the same thing. Well, it is one of my least favorite times of the NFL offseason. And from our 1 minute talking about this in the break, it sounds like you joined me in this. It's NFL 100 season. Top 100 players in the NFL. They just started the rankings. You want to know who number 100 is?
Oh.
Probably not, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Yeah, who is
Ladd McConkey is the number 100 player in the NFL. Congratulations, Ladd McConkey.
I think here's the thing for me is that everybody votes for their own teammates, more than likely. So, but if not everybody votes. So, like, if your team happened to be the one that gets the majority of votes turned in solidarity, then you're probably going to have a lot of Chargers on there.
Right.
Like, I bet here's what I'm going to say. I bet Elijah Molden makes it. I bet Justin Herbert makes it. I bet Ladd McConkey. I bet both tackles will make it. Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater. For some reason, Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack will make it too. Who knows why, but they all make it too. So at the end of the day, I just do not care.
We do not care.
Yeah, I mean, this and Madden ratings are the things that fans get most up in arms about. Like, everybody was talking about Cam Ward. Oh, he's a 71. Well, Kyler Murray was a Heisman-winning number 1 overall pick quarterback, and he was 73. Like, who gives a crap? Except for maybe Jackson Slater, who was the highest rated
75, right?
Good for Jackson Slater.
I feel differently about the Madden ratings thing than I used to because that is more of a fluid process now.
Yeah.
Like it used to be when you got a video game and you got the disc, because kids, we used to get video games on discs. Those are called CDs.
Or cartridges. I'm old enough for cartridges.
Exactly. And that used to be all that you would get. Like if Vince Young was a 75 as a rookie, he was going to be a 75 as long as you played that game, unless you went into his ratings and changed them. Well, now with the way online games are and the way that Madden can adjust ratings literally mid-season. Like, if Cam Ward's Rookie of the Year level, he's going to end up being like an 85 or an 86. Yeah. So, like, who cares what they are in July?
It just doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
Much like the top 100 doesn't matter.
Right.
And listen, I get that it matters for the players, but it shouldn't matter for fans.
Right.
I bet the Titans probably have 2 players on the list, maybe 3.
That's a good question.
I think Amani Hooker, Tony Pollard, and Jeffrey Simmons. Jeffrey Simmons is obviously the lock, I would assume.
Yeah.
But, like, I think those 3 guys would probably be top 100.
I would say Amani Hooker in a Cowboys jersey definitely would be.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
In a major market, I think Amani Hooker would be. I doubt he is on. I think he deserves to be on this list. I doubt he'll get the credit he's earned. I mean, at this point, I'm guessing it's.
I mean, you may sneak Calvin Ridley on there. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. They had 1,000 yards last year. Fair enough. 615-737-1045 is our number. Our question of the morning on Twitter at Ramon and Will. We put this out last night. Asked the question, should the Titans entertain trade offers for Chig Okonkwo or Josh Whyle? And if so, who would you rather trade? Only 9% of you say don't trade either one. So you are 90% of you open to at least entertaining the trade offers. 14% say Chig, 30% say Wiley, 45% of you are open to trading either one of them. A couple of interesting mixed responses on this. Troy McClure's Ghost writes in on Twitter and says, why are Titans fans obsessed with trading away players when we need players? At this point, I feel like you're obsessed with trading away valuable assets because, unfortunately, Zach, this team doesn't have a ton of valuable assets, and you are looking at a draft and develop organization to acquire as many bullets in that gun that you can put in it right now.
I also don't, how to put this sort of politely, don't view Josh Whyle as a valuable asset.
Fair enough. I mean, I think he's on the outside looking in of making the team right now.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. For sure. I look at it and I go, like, Mr. Positivity on Twitter, Jay Lomas, 72, says they shouldn't give any young players away, but Josh Whyle and Gunnar Helm are redundant. If someone wants to give you good value for Whyle, a 4th or better, you listen. If not, you just have to weigh the long-term option of staying cheap at a low-impact position. A 4th for Josh Whyle? That is ridiculous.
Crazy.
A 7th or a 6th should get Josh Whyle out the door.
Right. I agree.
That's wild.
I think at this point, I mean, if you get to a situation and you're the Titans and you decide, hey, we don't think Josh Whyle is making the team. We feel like he's on the outside looking in of this roster. And you feel like you have value in David Martin Robinson and Thomas Odukoya, who you imagine are going to stick on the practice squad at this point. Or maybe one of those 2 guys ends up making the 53 out of camp. I think you're looking at a pick swap kind of situation where you're looking to move up 30 to 40 spots in the NFL draft with someone. Like, can you give Josh Whyle in a 7 for a 5? Can you give Josh Whyle in a 6 for a 5 back? Like, that is, I think, the situation you're most likely looking at. Do you want an extra 5, but also give something else up in the process?
We're talking about a 5th rounder who has through, looks like 28 games, 7 starts and 342 yards, which is 12.2 yards per game.
Chicago might get you back a fourth round pick.
Yeah. I mean, Josh Wiley for a fourth round pick. Woo, buddy.
Yeah,
that's expensive.
Steep. Before we get to Lucas Panzica on the other side talking some soccer with us, let's go to Titan Willie, who has called in. What's up, Titan Willie?
Hey, good morning, boys. How are you doing?
Good.
Hey, Ron. Just want to talk one thing I think we're not talking about with this whole free agent market and why some people I think in the Titans field are saying, oh, well, we're not in the running for picking up any of these big names, maybe for a trade or a free agency. I just have to remind them, we are currently 12th in the league for the most cap space available at $30.6 million. Now, if we already have all of our funding deviated other places, not toward the quarterback, why wouldn't we be in the market for one of these other big name players? And secondly, I want to get your guys' opinion on this. Maybe running a multiple tight end scheme to make up for the lack of some of the depth in the wide receiver room. Would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Titan Willie. Appreciate the call. Starting with his first point, Zach, in terms of being in the running for bigger time players, I think the element of that's important is those players also have to want to come to your team.
Yeah, I think the Titans would be interested in Trey Hendrickson, but then you have to pay kind of like the suck tax, right? Like you're the Tennessee Titans, you guys may be coming off a 7-win season, so you may have to overpay.
Yeah,
and sometimes just because you overpay doesn't mean that player is going to take it. If maybe, let's say, the Kansas City Chiefs, and you get to play with Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce are only $5 million less than what you offered.
Right.
That's just how it goes. I'm not saying the Titans won't be in it. I'm just saying I'm not sure that those players will want to buy in. I'm not saying that's why they had to settle for some of these other free agents or not, but they've also kind of told us they're not going to do. They're going to build in a different way than what we're used to seeing here in Tennessee.
And if they could guarantee Zadarius Smith would accept their offer, I would love to go get Zadarius Smith. Heck,
for sure.
I'd settle for Preston Smith at this point.
Yeah.
Like that, I would.
I'm with you.
And that's two players that were in Green Bay when Chad Brinker was in Green Bay as well, who have familiarity with your front office. The other part of what Titan Willie asked about multiple tight ends of the offense, I think you and I both agree that they may be less tight end reliant this year even than they were last year, just considering Cam Ward's skill set.
They were like 24th or 25th in 12 personnel usage, which for those that may not know, that's one running back and two tight ends. So you're multiple tight end sets. Typically, when they wanted an extra tight end, they were putting in John Ojukwu. So, they were going jumbo instead of double tight ends. And that's when they had Josh Wiley and Nick Vannett. I look at it this way. If you go two tight ends, you're taking a wide receiver off the board.
Right.
So, because you're not taking Tony Pollard or Tajay Spears off there, more than likely. So you're taking away Tyler Lockett, Chimere Dike, Alec Manor. Those guys are probably all better than all the tight ends that you got and are more impactful in different ways. So I think this is going to be a team that's going to continue what they're doing and use 11 personnel at like a 68% clip.
I agree. And when you don't have the turnstile at right tackle the Titans had last year, let's all cross our fingers and knock on wood simultaneously. But considering the Titans should be better at both tackle positions, you also don't need one of those tight ends to be constantly bailing out whoever your tackle is. Like when you pay Dan Moore what you paid him and you draft J.C. Latham where you drafted him, albeit now as a second-year guy, you still got a lot to learn. You have to rely on those guys to win one-on-one.
Yep.
That's just how you have to accumulate and then deploy your resources in the league. When you spend as much capital, both draft and free agent, just dollars, on those two tackles, you got to trust them to just block one-on-one and win. So,
if they're not doing that, ooh, buddy.
Yeah,
those investments.
Exactly. Exactly right. We shift gears when we come back. Lucas Panzica is in the building. And coming up, we're going to talk a little Nashville Soccer Club with him. An opportunity to preview, since we're not here Thursday or Friday, a big game Saturday. Nashville SC and Philadelphia Union. Lucas will help us explain to you and discuss with you why it's so important. Coming up next. I'll do QC after the USS thing. Ramon Will, fueled by Scooters Coffee, 104.5 The Zone, as you can start your morning with a little bit of Scooters in your life. Rivergate, Smyrna, Brentwood, White House, Mount Juliet, amazing people, amazing drinks, amazingly fast. Zach Lyons with us, filling in for Ramon. Justin Hawkins spinning the hits and joining us this morning in studio a little bit before the Buck Rising show kicks off. We're just combining another show here into the studio. Lucas Panzica is here to talk a little bit of soccer with us. What's up?
What's up, fellas?
How we doing?
We're just missing someone from 3HL to make this complete
that's right.
corporate synergy.
Ah, yes. I like corporate synergy.
This
That's
used
good.
to be Slay's time slot back in the day before we switched him to Fridays. So we could have had just like a small council meeting.
Let me just
of
say,
all the hosts.
with the state I imagine Slay is in post-surgery, it would be much better radio if it was Slay on this mic and not me on this
That
mic.
dump button may have to be like really, quick trigger.
We'd all be going for a sleigh ride.
Yeah, we would be.
We
Absolutely
would be.
So, Lucas, I wanted to talk a little bit of soccer with you because this is a big one Saturday. And I was talking to some people about this yesterday. Is it fair to say that Saturday for Nashville SC, third place of the Eastern Conference against league leaders Philadelphia, this is the biggest regular season game in Geodis Park history?
Oh, man.
Because I'm having a hard time finding a bigger one. I mean, Gareth Bale and LAFC coming to town 2 years ago. You have 3 years ago, obviously, the stadium opens. So the first game ever in stadium history is consequential of, the first of everything, first goal, first, everything that can possibly happen. But talking about first versus third, a chance to lead the league if you win and Chicago beats Cincinnati, where Nashville could finish Saturday top of MLS. There's a big opportunity Saturday.
Yeah, no, there's absolutely a case for it. I mean, the last time Nashville was on a run, anything even close to this, was 2 years ago, right? With, 10 unbeaten at that point, and that was earlier in the year, and I don't think at any point in that run they faced a team at the very top of the MLS standings like they are now. So here you are in July. It's officially July, and these are two bona fide contenders. So, yes, I think there's a great case to be made for that. Just two teams that, at this point in the season, have their sights set on MLS Cup and have the two top scorers in Major League Soccer. I mean, there's a lot that you can point to with this game.
It's going to be fun. Zach, however much you want to know on the 100, 200, or 300 level, we got you here this morning. But
I like it.
And from your perspective, and just from the Nashvillians' perspective, like, this is the time to jump in. This is the weekend to jump in. And I know the ticket sales look good on the resale marketplace to begin with, that it's a holiday weekend and people are in town and Nashville's going to be buzzing. But Geodis Park is going to be the place to be on Saturday. And for this Nashville SC team, Lucas, we've talked about it, and we always try, I kind of give this disclaimer every time we talk soccer, but we try to kind of bridge the gap between some of the 300 level, but also people that are listening right now saying, what the heck are you guys talking about? This team isn't just good, it is entertaining for people that might not know what they're watching. And I think at this point, you have a really good time to jump in because you have one of the best attacks in the league. You mentioned Sam Surridge, who is leading the Golden Boot race, which is just the term for highest score in the league, with 16 goals. Not only are they going to win a lot of games, Lucas, they're going to do so in a way that is very fun to watch for the neutral observer.
Yeah, they generate goal-scoring chances as well as, if not better than any team in Major League Soccer, and Sam Surridge has just been on the end of those chances, which is why his goal tally has been as high as it has been. I mean, he's already surpassed the mark of his total goals in all competitions last year, much less just in MLS play. So they are red hot. They are very confident. They are very consistent at the moment. 3 straight road wins in Major League Soccer is no joke, especially considering the road trip they just took up to Foxborough, where they just went straight to D.C., practiced a couple days in our nation's capital, played again in D.C. in sweltering hot weather on Saturday, and just kind of grinded out a result to come back home, still unbeaten, still on the rise. And if FC Cincinnati wasn't in such good form, this would be a battle between number 1 and number 2 in the Eastern Conference. But Cincinnati, to their credit, just kind of keeps holding off Nashville, 1 point ahead of Nashville in the standings. We'll see if that changes this weekend. So, look, we know how far away the Titans are. There is a beacon of hope, which is great. The Preds, I would argue, are further away, and there is no real beacon of hope. They're just kind of stuck. Wheels are kind of spinning, it feels like, with the Preds. And this is a team that is a contender. Like, right now, Nashville could win major MLS Cup. Like, they could be MLS champions. And it would be surprising to tell any MLS fan or media member or whatever that in January. But now it doesn't feel like such a shock if that is how it were to play out. There's a lot that needs to happen. Maybe some depth scoring that could pop up down the stretch here. And obviously, an unbeaten run has to come to an end at some point. But hopefully for Nashville, it's not Saturday in front of what should be a rocking crowd.
Yeah, as far as this is kind of what we talked about in cover 2, I think last week, is that if you start kind of ranking the pro teams just in Tennessee about who's closest to getting a title or a championship, it's going to go at Nashville SC, Grizzlies, Titans, then Predators.
They got to be in the same on the same level, right? Like the same category. There's just more to be excited about if you're a Titans fans. But what can you definitively say puts the Titans ahead of the Preds? Right? They're both equally
I guess
far
Cam
away.
Ward,
in my mind.
because like Philip Forsberg, we've kind of seen that. Okay, he's a great player, right? I mean, Philip Forsberg is awesome. But that hasn't really translated anything yet. With Cam Ward, I guess we have the unknown.
Exactly. Like there's
so
the
maybe
upside.
the unknown and the upside gets them a little bit of an edge. But that's what it feels like right now. It feels like clearly it goes MLS, NBA for the state of Tennessee.
Yes.
Right.
And I think it's MLS by even a bigger margin than it is, the Grizzlies are that close.
Mm-hmm.
I think the MLS is by far and away. And it's a great stadium, by the way.
It's awesome.
Fantastic. Every picture that is taken by people of that stadium, it looks fake. It looks CGI generated because it's so clean and just so perfectly designed. And it's an awesome stadium, awesome experience. We've been a few times. My wife loves going. So if you're a soccer head and you're afraid if your wife, who may not know anything about soccer, is going to enjoy her experience, I can assure you she will.
Absolutely.
Go have some empanadas and just kick back and enjoy it. Yeah.
I switched to the chicken empanadas over last week at the Club World Cup. Absolutely. Yes. So, Lucas, when you look at the matchup with Philadelphia, look at what Nashville SC is going to have to do to kind of take that next step. We've asked BJ Callahan a lot about this season in our meetings with him about playing this level of competition and the next phase for Nashville. Nashville's 13 games unbeaten, 3 road wins in a row, like you mentioned, and kind of clicking on all cylinders. What is the next phase, though? What do you want to see in a busy month of July as this team continues to evolve and not just stay what they are right now for the rest of the season? Because we still got potentially 4 months left in this season.
I kind of mentioned it. A little bit of scoring depth, I think. When you look at the top of the score sheet for Nashville, Surridge on 16 goals, Mukhtar on 8 goals. And then the next lead scorer for this club has 2, right? And there's multiple guys that have 2. Ahmed Kassam, Dan Lovitz has chipped in a couple of goals. And then Alex Muil's gotten on the score sheet, Jacob Schaffelberg, but you still don't have that sort of tertiary option to chip in, 5 to 8 goals in a season. Right. Now, Surridge has gotten on the end of a lot of those chances. He's the main penalty kick taker as well, so maybe he takes some goals away in that regard. But for me, that's probably the number one thing. But they're rolling right now. There's no question about it. And one thing that they've done this season, better than almost anybody in Major League Soccer, is win on those rematches. So you play everybody in the Eastern Conference twice, right? Nashville is 5-0, as in 5 wins, 0 losses, 0 draws when they see a team the second time around. There's something about the way that they prepare for a team in the second meeting. First meeting against Philly back in March was a 3-1 victory at Subaru Park. First ever win for this club in Philadelphia. This is a difficult team to sweep in 2025. To take 6 points against Philly in 2 games is a really tall task, but you get the luxury of getting a crack at that at home and not having to go on the road after beating a team at home. So I look forward to seeing that being tested more than anything. The streak they're on of winning these rematches and how much they're able to take from that first game and apply it and kind of use their momentum along the way. Both of these teams, obviously are red hot sitting at the top of the standings.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You got 2 of the top strikers as well in MLS on the pitch together Saturday. Ty Baribo for Philadelphia, Sam Surridge for Nashville. Sam and the numbers speak for themselves. 16 goals, leading the league. What has impressed you the most about how he's done it, about his maturation and already surpassing his goal total from all of last season? He's on pace to not only be the Golden Boot leader in MLS at the end of the season and be the winner of that award. He's on pace to be the first player in MLS to score 25 league goals in about 5 years at this point. I mean, that hasn't happened since Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Carlos Vela did it pre-COVID. Like 25 goals in MLS is a tall task.
Yeah, no doubt. What impresses me about Sam is just the different things that he brings outside of just finishing chances. Like we've talked about this sort of stereotype of a number 9, a center forward that comes over from England to Major League Soccer, probably just thought to be kind of a poacher, just an old school traditional English player that's going to lead the line and kind of finish off those chances, tap-ins at the back post, headers, whatever it might be. But Sam, his work rate off the ball, his pressure defensively to win the ball back for Nashville in dangerous areas, his willingness to drop deep, to range side to side on the field is really what sets him apart. And it kind of endears him to BJ Callahan and the rest of this team. And he's been on the end of chances. He's able to create things on his own as well. So just the wide range of how he's able to impact a game. It's more than just getting on the end of a combination at the back post, right? Or just winning a header in the box or scoring on a penalty kick. Like Sam Surridge is able to impact the game in several different areas with his work rate on top of that. So that's the thing that I've really appreciated about him, and just kind of the way he sort of kept his head down. He's a mild-mannered guy, as you know, Will, and
yeah, right.
it just kind of been going about his business, and that's just what this team has kind of done. They're not riding this wave, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like BJ Callahan is the exact same BJ Callahan every single week. Sam Surridge, all these players, when you listen to them, there's never a modicum of getting too high or getting too low. It's just kind of, no, that was good. We like the performance.
Right.
Got to work on this. It's, one game at a time. All of those cliches, but those cliches are a real thing. Like you need to lean into those cliches and practice them. And I think this team absolutely has. They've treated every game as its own individual challenge and blocked out everything else. It's a huge reason why they are where they are right now.
Is that a credit to the coach, a credit to the players, a little bit of both? Because I see here that Nashville SC is among MLS's smartest spenders per 2025 data. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, how is that just how they built this roster? Because last year, I mean, Nashville SC was kind of feeling a little low from the outside looking in. And then this year, like you said, nobody in January would have thought this team is where it's at. And now here we are, 13, no losses in 13 straight games. I mean, and they're keeping their wits about them. I mean, like, where does that come from within this group? Is that a credit to the leadership and the veteran players or what?
Yeah, well, number one, they did not have to totally overhaul the roster, right? Like when you look at the core players, the spine of this team, Sam Surridge leading the line, right. Ronnie Mukhtar, one of the best creative playmakers in the league. And he's not with the team right now. He's with the U.S. in the Gold Cup, but Walker Zimmerman is one of the best center backs in all of Major League Soccer. So that's sort of your spine from top to bottom. That was already in place, but what they did to supplement that, to boost the midfield with the signing of Eddie Tagseth, to bring in Andy Nahar at right back, who's an MLS All-Star this year, having a career season as he gets into his 30s at this point as an attacking guy out of the back. That is a credit to the front office for sure. Mike Jacobs, I think they spent really smartly in the offseason. But more than anything, BJ Callahan he's just come in and injected this attitude, this mentality as soon as he got hired, which I think in 2 days, it'll be a calendar year of him being announced. Mm-hmm. After coming over from the primary assistant with the U.S. men's national team, first head coaching job for BJ Callahan, he said, we're going to play young players, which this club hadn't really done. We're going to have an emphasis on developing young players, which this club hadn't really done in its first phase of MLS play. We're going to be on the front foot, forward facing, everyone attacks, everyone defends. All of these things, all these benchmarks, these sort of boxes that he said they were going to check, they have. Like, they're just doing all of those things. And to me, that's the biggest credit that you can give them. They're just doing all of the things that they said they would do. And here they are, sitting here as a top 3 team in the East.
Maybe the Titans Callahan can learn from the Nashville SC Callahan.
I don't know what Brian Callahan of the Titans' middle name is. Maybe a switch to the initials.
Yeah. Maybe BF Callahan.
Is that what's his middle?
I believe his middle name starts with an F.
Okay, maybe not.
We can effort that. This is important journalistic stuff we're doing right now. While I'm looking that up, Lucas, you were on the call for U.S. Switzerland for Westwood One here at the station. The United States is into the semifinals of the Gold Cup tomorrow night against Guatemala. Do you feel better, worse, or the same about U.S. soccer since that Switzerland game right now when they're taking on Guatemala in a semifinal?
I'm feeling slightly better.
Okay.
I'm feeling slightly better, but there's still a very significant ceiling on how much better this U.S. team can make me feel this summer. And it's not their fault, the guys that are there.
Yeah,
it's just not the lineup we're going to see at the World Cup next summer. There's 7 to 8 guys that are probably going to be in the starting 11 next summer that are not with this team for one reason or another, taking the summer off, injury, Club World Cup, whatever it might be. So there's that ceiling on just how good I can feel about it, but I do like how it feels like they're improving from game to game. There's a few things I didn't like from the Costa Rica game. A lot of opportunity to slam the door shut on Costa Rica there, but you kind of let them back in it, go to penalties. That's an absolute crapshoot. The one position that I do feel slightly better about, obviously, is goalkeeper with Matt Freeze. Yes. Finally, we're seeing somebody in this goalkeeping pool, which traditionally has been the strongest position for the U.S. men's national team. Like, it's not really close, right? The amount of
not at all.
The one position that we've consistently sent over to Europe and had at a high level is goalkeeper. Tim Howard and Casey Keller and Brad Guzan and Brad Fiedel. Like, the list goes on and on. This is as poor of a place as we've been in, I think, in the modern era at the goalkeeper position. So it was great to see Matt Freeze kind of just stake his claim with that penalty shootout. 3 saves, fantastic. I don't know if you saw this, but obviously he's a Harvard guy. That's been talked about a lot, the NYCFC keeper. But he wrote a research paper at Harvard about the science of penalty kicks.
Oh, wow.
From a goalkeeping standpoint, which I thought was really, really cool. And he put that into practice. There is a science, a psychological science behind it. And he had 3 saves. And let's be honest, like, he could have gotten 5.
Yeah,
like,
right.
He chose the right. He had his hands on 2 other ones that just were too powerful and he couldn't get out. So I do feel a little bit better about that spot for sure. And we'll see. I mean, you have to take care of business Wednesday against Guatemala.
Yeah, right.
And you could be on this crash course or a collision course to Mexico Sunday in the final. And that's always easy to get up for.
Yeah, absolutely. Mexico has also struggled a little bit to score goals within this tournament. Good stuff as always. Lucas Panzica, of course, on the Buck Rising Show coming up here in a few minutes. It's a short week. Wanted to talk some soccer. Wanted to set the table for, again, what I think is the biggest regular season game in Geodis Park history. And Saturday, 7 o'clock. We'll be right here on the Zone. We're looking forward to it.
Yes, sir. See you guys at Geodis Park.
Yes, sir. That's Lucas Panzica. We will wrap up the show with a couple more headlines for you coming up next. Wrapping up the show in this Tuesday morning edition of Ramon and Will. We are fueled by Scooters Coffee. Appreciate Easton Freeze and Lucas Panzica dropping by today. And thank you, Zach Lyons, for hosting today. Great work. Appreciate you.
No, thanks for having me.
It's been fun.
Really appreciate it.
2 hours of Cover 2 with Blaine and Zach still to come with Blaine and Zach today. You want to give the people a preview of what you got for them today?
Well, we've been trying to get to this conversation about what if Cam Ward is just Jordan Love.
Oh.
Which I don't think just Jordan Love is the dig that everybody thinks it is. I think Jordan Love deserves a little bit more respect in the NFL.
Fair.
And I think that you can win a Super Bowl with Jordan Love. So we're going to talk about all that.
I like it. Good stuff. Tennessee football news today. Some potential announcements coming. Jackson Academy in Jackson, Mississippi has a pair of teammates who are set to announce their commitments today. The latest info from On3 and Rivals, which merged as of yesterday. So congrats to Shannon Terry, the whole crew over there at On3 and Rivals. Chad Simmons writing that Tennessee is trending well for Darian Albert, who is a defensive lineman ranked as a 4-star, number 13 player in the state of Mississippi. TJ White, the big headliner, though, with respect to Darian Albert. TJ White ranked by the On3 industry ranking as the number 5 inside linebacker in the country, a legitimate 4-star prospect who is potentially going to become a Vol today. Zach, your Alabama Crimson Tide have taken pretty much every 5-star in the last couple of weeks. So a couple more for Tennessee now. You're sharing.
That may save Caitlin DeBoer.
Right now, Alabama recruiting is as on fire as it has been definitely post-Saban.
Yeah.
But Alabama recruiting right now is as good as, and again, it's July. You got to keep these guys.
Right.
As good as the best Nick Saban days and classes were.
Which is very surprising because I know at one point the scuttlebutt around the program was like, hey, the NIL money is just not going to be there. Like compared to other schools and in the SEC. So that's why you're going to see kind of this dip in, and more parity coming from the Alabama side of things.
Right.
But if things go well with Ty Simpson, local product here, and all that, we'll see. I'm not the biggest Ty Simpson fan from what I've seen in much little action, but maybe he can't be worse than Jalen Milroe was last year. But, I do have to say that of all the things that have kind of gone wrong since Kalen DeBoer's hire, the recruiting taking off is a big confidence boost for some of the people that may already want him gone. And I'm here for preaching patience because, whoever was going to be the guy that follows Saban was never going to be as good as Saban. Right. But Kalen DeBoer is your best shot.
Right.
Like your best shot at staying relevant, or you're probably going to take a nosedive.
Yep. They have Alabama added, I believe, 9 commits just in the month of June. In June is when you start to do these things. Yep. But just last week, Xavier Griffin, 5-star linebacker from Gainesville, Georgia, that Tennessee was in on. And then the number 2 running back in the country is Xavier Crowell from Jackson, Alabama, another 5-star. So they only have 15 commits so far. They're still ranked I believe 6th or no, not 9th right now in the On3 industry rankings, but with only 15 guys in the boat. That's just pure volume.
Yeah.
The guys they're getting have been exceptional, to say the least. So
fingers crossed. Maybe not from you, but from me.
Fair enough. Interested to see how all that goes. I know Ty Simpson got some praise for the Manning of Passing Academy last week.
He did. Is some good stuff being written about him and his presence there and all that. So, I know that he was a highly touted recruit. He chose to stay for a long time, kind of riding the bench. So I know he comes from a good football family and all that kind of stuff. I'm hoping it actually turns into something. Like I'm hoping that he, being 2 years into a Kalen DeBoer system, that maybe they took extra special care with him throughout this season, the season last year.
He is he was such a fun athlete to watch at Westview.
Yeah.
I called his senior state championship game for that team. I believe that was a 2A state title back then. I think they've moved up to 3A, but he was like a Brett Favre like athlete in high school. Yeah. Interested to see how that translates, obviously, but it is nice at least to see a quarterback stick it out and wait their turn.
For sure, for sure.
Rooting for him, even though he's an Alabama guy. We're back at it tomorrow morning. Rhett Bryan will join me. We will be joined by Brent Hubbs a couple of days early, talking about all those Tennessee recruiting updates. And we're going to have the top 10 plays from Steve McNair's career tomorrow on Ramon and Will. Looking forward to that with Rhett Bryan. Zach, appreciate you again. Thank you, sir.
No problem. I appreciate having me on.
Buck Rising Show next. You get him on cover 2 with Blaine and Zach. Zach Lyons, of course, 3HL. We got you covered all day here on 104.5 The Zone. The Buck Rising Show is next.